everybody, and welcome to 2023, and back to Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves. We are over halfway through Season 2. I am still your host, Ike, and before we get too far underway, I'd like to just say thanks for being here and helping my dreams come true, and giving this pod a listen. I appreciate that you chose to take this time and give me and my guest an ear of your moment. Now, if you still have time after you've enjoyed this episode and wouldn't mind taking a second to share this with someone who you like, or who you think or who you think would like it, or just subscribing yourself if you already haven't, that would mean a lot. So actually, I've got a rare gift, a late Christmas present, if you will, even though it is technically still the season. Today, in the audio booth, in the recording studio, I've got with me my best friend and bestest editor, Richard Ashford!
What is up, everyone? How's it going? How's your new year treating you?
You'll have to forgive him, folks. He doesn't know how to use a microphone.
I don't know how to use words.
Richard decided to come down and count down the ball drop with me this New Year's Eve. And so we get to actually do this intro together in person, just for you. A little thanks for, breaking in 2023 with us.
A little New Year's gift, so to speak.
So, other than coming down and having the ball drop, having a sip of an alcoholic beverage, what you got going on in your life these days, Ricardo Montalban?
Oh, just life in general. Day-to-day things are happening. Back at home, I'm a flight instructor. I teach out of an airport, which is a good place to teach flying. Oh, you're putting me on the spot here.
Did you get any good Christmas presents?
Everything I wanted and more. I actually didn't really want much this year, so I got it exactly what I wanted. I got to see my family, though, so that was cool.
Any shout-outs to any and all fam?
Oh, shout-outs to all of my fam. I don't know if they listen to this podcast. But I love all of my family. So if you're here, I love you.
Well, I'm glad you guys are right here listening. This year, as you can hear, I am feeling a truck ton better. So my vocal quality has exceeded back to its normal pablum. I got a bunch of cute Christmas presents. I'll share my favorite one, which our patron Sibella Yellow knows very well and dear what it was. Brother had we had some interesting, I don't know about the rest of you. There was a lot of, Christmas travel difficulties for a lot of people, myself included, not only being sick, but also the weather was playing some interesting parts and travel details. One of which being that I needed a piece of equipment to have my editor here, Richard Ashford, and my good friend and not too distant guest, Kyler Martin, help me remake my computer so that it would stop going poop. To do so, I needed a new RAM stick, which came late and was ordered to a different address, so I had to wait around for an extra day and a half longer than it was supposed to be sent to me. So ended up, instead of getting back at the time I expected, it was nearly a day later. Other than that, 2023 coming out. I don't know about you guys, but made some New Year's resolutions. One of which is to continue to make this podcast even bigger and better. So strap yourselves in, folks. So today's guest, I've got my friend and recent guest, Roman, recommended that I bring on his friend, COLIN BEVIS, who is the guest today. He's a fellow Magic player. We had a great talk about a movie I never thought I'd hear discussed in such depth, let alone on this podcast. Not going to spoil which title it is, so stick around, at least until the P portion. Spoilers! To find out what movie got Colin's cadence carried away in this episode. Enjoy. All right, folks. Today I've got with me a man that I know very little about. Please come with me as I get to know Mr. COLIN BEVIS. How are we doing, Colin?
I'm doing really, really well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Did I pronounce your last name correctly? I guess I did. I forgot to double check that.
You did, and I realized as you were doing the intro, I was like, well, this is going to be interesting. We may do this again, and or just, you know what, honestly, just roll with it. I have been called Beavis so many times in my life. You cannot insult me. From middle school to high school, I was just like, yep, there it is. Think you're the first person to say it, and I've gotten this
like,
hundreds of times.
Beavis. Yeah.
Yeah. My older brother had it worse than I did. The show had been canceled by the time I made it to high school. He was older than me, and the show was still on when he was in high school. So definitely had it worse than I did. I have literally at a doctor's office, because my name is Colin with one L, I've had a woman yell colon Beavis. So
Wow.
I've seen it all. It's all good. It's actually kind of
That
kind of
almost
funny
sounds like a Beavis and Butthead sketch.
Yeah, it does. That's my entire life is actually a Beavis and Butthead sketch.
I mean, there are worse shows to be living, I do suppose.
Yeah, no, it's not that bad. It's a comedy. It makes people laugh. I'm happy.
So, do you remember the first date movie you ever went on?
Oh gosh. No. I can tell you this, that I was just incredibly nervous and scared of women in high school. I was truly, and still am, that nerd from high school. We would play Magic the Gathering at our 30-minute lunch breaks. And just had an absolute blast with my friends in high school. I was very lucky to have a good group of people, but God, I didn't have a girlfriend until I was in college. Not really, you know what I mean? I would have like friends that were girls that were like, "Yo, I don't want to go to prom alone," and I'm like, "Yeah, like totally. I'd love to go."
I feel honored. What can I say?
Yeah. It was, and it was fun. But as a whole, my first girlfriend was in college, and I don't know what movie we went to. God, I wish I did. That's a great question.
What do you? Okay, I've got a backup for this. I saw this play coming a mile away, kid. What in lieu of that? What do you think? What are some good movies that you think make a good first date movie?
Oh wow! Now, if we're not, yeah, this is a great question. I'm a huge Princess Bride fan. I would say
classic from end to end.
Yes, I would say that that has to be just a fun, lighthearted, but wonderful adventure. It's not very long, but it tells a very.
It's got the good, like, I think it's 100-minute runtime of like old Hollywood. Yeah, you got all the actors, the good writing, the good direction of I can't remember his name.
I saw the movie again after COVID, and there's a line where he says, "Masks are incredibly comfortable. I think everyone will be wearing one someday." And I was just like, how does this movie continue to like predict the future and get better somehow and make me feel like they understood the struggles we went through? And I was just, it was even better than ever. Recently.
No, it's just a true banger from end to end. You know, you got directed by Rob Reiner, Carrie Ewells in his heyday, Mandy Patinkin playing a character role. You've got Robin Wright. You've got, freaking Wallace Shawn, Andre the Giant. Peter Falk in his old days, Fred Savage and young before he had the mole. All this stuff. Billy Crystal's a side role. The weird one is I don't know what character he played in this, but the guy that voiced Batman who recently died was also in here. You also have Christopher Guest as Count Rugen. Where was he? I know that the guy that voiced the OG Batman was on this film in some fashion or another. Now I have to go. I thought he did.
Absolutely incredible cast. Yeah, that's like if somebody was like, "Yo, we're doing like a date at the house and I need a movie." I think that comes up immediately as the first thing that came to mind. So, and that has to be just one of the classics from Inconceivable to I wonder if he's using the same wind we are using to some of just some incredible lines that I still try to
I
fit
didn't
into
know
any
that there was a line in
conversation.
there. That's so good.
Yeah. As much as you can, try to fit lines from that movie into your life without people noticing.
Did
It's
you see the I don't know if it was over COVID, but they made a bunch of actors made it scene by scene, did like a fun recreation. I think you can find it on YouTube of The Princess Bride, but just done by a bunch of actors who weren't in it or were playing different roles if they were.
Yes, I haven't seen that, but over COVID, yeah, they did. They did some sort of reunion. They did some sort of
No,
event.
it wasn't the original cast. It was just if you Google, let me see if I can YouTube it real quick. If I can find it, it'll definitely be, look in the look in the description of wherever you're getting this podcast because it should be listed there. But I think there was a Princess Bride done by, but I know that it's online. Like Jack Black will like play, played a scene or something like that. Um, yeah, it's if you look up the Princess Bride home movie full, they made it like shot for shot, via hand cams and stuff like that.
Oh, that's so
Um,
cool. I can't believe I never heard of that. Yes, please find that and put that in the description. I will go watch that as well immediately.
yeah,
Yeah,
I'm seeing a scene where Dave Bautista is playing the Andre the Giant role for like a scene via David Spade as the Man in Black, or
nice.
across the David Spade as the Man in Black. It's amazing. But yeah, it's just it's just truly a gem. Well, since we're talking about him, do you have a favorite movie line that you like to quote apropos of nothing, whether it be from Princess Bride or from some other fantastic film?
Oh, wow. I love these questions. Yeah, that has to be one of my favorite. That has to be one of my favorite movies. I guess there's a film that got remade into an English film, but it's called The Secret in Their Eyes. It won Best Foreign Film in the early 2010s. And I don't want to give away anything about the movie, but if I could immediately when you ask that question, and I'm just a big film buff. I've always been a film buff. Um, I heard Martin Scorsese say when I was in high school, he was like, I watch a movie every day. And it actually helped me stay out of trouble growing up in a really small town. And I did, and I really did. I watched the movie every single day. But The Secret in Their Eyes had a line at the end of it where he turns to him and it basically translates to, you said life, meaning you promised me that you would give him a life sentence. And it just culminates the entire movie. And it's not like something I can like jokingly say like The Princess Bride. It's quite a serious, intense, rated R
Yeah.
film. But yeah, that line from that movie it still means a lot to me. Recently, I saw Midnight Alley, and
Oh,
it had
the original or the
this.
recent remake by Guillaume?
Yeah. Guillaume's recent remake with uh, why am I blanking on his name all of a sudden? Bradley Cooper,
Yep.
and he at the end of the movie says, "I was born to do this," which is also a very similar culmination of the entire movie in this one amazing line. And those kind of
Yeah.
lines, those last lines that are just like in serious or intense films, they stay with me sometimes for a really long time.
No, it's beautiful. Also, random aside, I remember I haven't gotten around to seeing that movie. All I've heard is great things, but I remember listening to a interview with Guillaume del Toro with on the What the Fuck podcast with Mark Maron. I like him or love him, like or love his films. I think you have to love the man. That he is just a true gem of a human being. If you've never not heard an interview with Guillermo del Toro, he's just the sweetest. I'm just so happy that a man like that is continuing to make movies and get money and get to like have his vision realized. He's just the most adorable.
Yeah, no, he really is. I've only heard a few interviews with him, but just to have such like a sweet soul and then create such and able to handle so much of a version of horror or a version of
Yeah,
fantasy that he has in his mind. I was in high school when I saw Pan's Labyrinth, and it really did change the way I look at film. And you would imagine the person who makes that to be quite gritty or rough around the edges, and
yeah.
it's like the sweetest person you could
No, he's
imagine.
the nicest guy. He's
Yeah.
also just a huge film nerd and just an overall softie. And it's like, it's so beautiful to see the people at the top aren't necessarily jaded or ugh.
He's just like, I just like making movies, man. I don't know what to tell you. And just like, he's just such a good soul. It's just, love you, Guillaume.
Yeah. Working, doing something you love, you're really not working a day of your life. And that's like a dream we all reach for.
Not only that, but to not have so many people get into the business bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and the business, whatever it is, kind of beats them down a little bit, but to still be that like joyous child. I have that childlike wonderment of like, I get to make movies and just being so excited about it and just having this childlike wonderment while having the working man's fervor to get it done and balancing it out and not losing yourself, like not losing your soul to get your bag kind of thing. It's just so beautiful to see good examples of it, of that, you know, there's so many people that they change over the years and, you know, to each their own, but they lose that wonderment, that fun, that joy because they had to be an adult, which I don't have, you know, a significant other to answer to, kids to worry about, you know, the way they view me and what I'm portraying. So a little bit of that is, you know, I don't fully understand that circumstance, but it feels like one of those things that doesn't have to happen, that a lot of people presume to do because that's what they've seen others do before them. To see somebody who just goes, I just love doing this weird shit and I'm going to find a way to make it happen. And, you know, just like, he's just so enthralled with the process and doesn't ever at any point feel the need to be serious. He's just like, I get to do this thing and make movies, and he's just excited. And it's just so beautiful to see that. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Just getting to do something you love that is so often it starts as a hobby, and then because of your kind of endless passion towards it, it becomes your job, and then that hobby, you're like, man, I do my hobby all day, and you know how privileged, how lucky am I? That's like I was saying, that's like the dream that I think so many of us, almost everybody I know, right, is reaching for in some way or another.
So clearly I've already showed my hand of who I would pick to take to lunch, but who's someone you've never met, alive or dead, that you'd like to take to lunch and just have a chat with?
Wow. Okay, I always say the first thing that comes to mind, and I don't judge myself, and it was Carl Sagan. I'm a huge fan. So Contact was one of my favorite, 1997, I'm pretty sure it came out, just following his book. Big fan of that movie. That was like, and I was like pretty young, and the movie had just come out probably a year or two before. I was like 8 or 10 years old. That movie sparked my love of science, of the universe, of everything that I just love about NASA and the way we look to the stars and what it gives us in regards to this endless lifelong pursuit of knowledge and the search for God in the universe and everything that any conversation you could have. For me, and like so many people fall into the love of this in different ways, it was Contact, which was based off of his book, and he inspired, and there's some incredible stories out there. Like his entire story is remarkable, and there's some stories about how he mentored Neil deGrasse Tyson, and just the kindness that he showed everybody that he met in life. From at least, I never met him, but if I could take one person out, that was the first name that came to my mind when you used to ask the question. And I was like, man, that would be one incredible conversation. He's also a teacher. He was a teacher, a mentor to so many people. I think he would actually like really, you could get something really special out of it versus saying somebody who's like, like Elon Musk is an answer I hear people say a lot, like, but he's not a teacher by nature, and he's very, very busy, and he's constantly exhausted, and I'm not sure you would get the same level of energy or experience out of lunch with him. I say that respectfully. He's got a lot on his plate, but man, Carl Sagan, I feel like he would just sit down with you and spend a whole evening, a 2 or 3 hour dinner. Just you could ask him questions if you had that miracle moment.
Well, since just kind of curious, if you were going to make a favorite meal just for yourself and maybe Carl Sagan, assuming cost and time were not relevant factors, what do you think you'd make?
Yeah. Oh, wow. I love cooking. My parents could not cook at all. There was nothing but salt and pepper in our house and a lot of frozen food growing up. I love them to death, but I got into college and I try really hard. I'm no chef. I'm not anywhere near like went to school for culinary or anything, but I love making like with penne pasta and tomato basil sauce with like Italian sausage and then like any other like vegetables I have around and seasoning. That's probably my favorite dish. And one I've done
Nice.
many times. I got to go with something like that if Carl Sagan's coming over for dinner. I got to make sure I got my top tier ready. That's probably my favorite dish to make and cook at home.
That sounds awesome. You can't ever go wrong with penne pasta. It's the
Yeah.
perfect noodle. Big
Yeah.
fan, big fan.
It's my favorite. Yeah, and the like spicy Italian sausage. So
Well, this might not go with this dish, but if you were a condiment, which do you think you'd be?
oh my gosh. I would I would definitely say ketchup. Shout out to my sister who is not a nerd and would and never listen to this. No, I'm gonna make her listen to this now. Shout out Tally, I love you. But
Aw.
we just grew up, like I said, with like salt and pepper. Like we just grew up with a bottle of ketchup in the fridge as well, and
Yeah, of
we
course.
would put
They're
ketchup
Americans.
on we would put ketchup on eggs. Like we were just trying to find flavor in our childhood, and and I definitely have to. That's like immediately what comes to mind, and I've got so many crazy ketchup stories.
So exactly same for me. Growing up, put ketchup on everything. There was always a big bottle of Heinz in the
Yep.
fridge, and then stopped for a long time because rebel against the status quo that you have been brought up with.
Mhm.
But recently, I've been noticing how much I enjoy ketchup on eggs again. It's kind of wild. It's come full circle.
Yes, no.
It's very interesting.
It's important that you rebel at a certain, your teenage
Yeah.
years and your 20s, and then you just come back on your own. And I also I'm 31, so yeah, back in my 30s now, I'm enjoying them on fries more than I ever have. And sometimes like the simplest things in life, if you have I've had like the luxury through work at times to try really expensive food, really
Uh-huh.
bougie stuff, and I'm not just saying this. Maybe it's because of my upbringing. There's like something about the really simple things in life, like cooking, just like potatoes, and I'll boil the potatoes just a little bit, then I'll take them out, then I'll like fry them with oil on the stove, and then put salt, maybe some seasoning on them with some eggs. Like I could eat that every day the rest of my life. It's like eggs and potatoes, right? It's like the cheapest thing you could buy, and I don't think any meal on a daily basis will ever beat that. Even if I was a
Yeah,
billionaire, I'm like,
absolutely agree.
I don't want lobster every day. I don't know.
No.
I don't. I don't think it tastes
It's
good.
Lobster is just a cargo to eat melted butter. That's all it is. It's not actually that good. It just tastes amazing because you put a lot of butter on it.
Yeah.
But so does a shoe. So
Yeah. No, yeah, no. I could agree more. I'm not a fan of lobster, and I don't know, just some of the fancier things in life. Not that I planned on bringing up The Menu, which is a movie I just saw, but man, I related. If you haven't got a chance, it's one of the best movies I've seen in years, and has Ralph Fiennes in it, who has been in so many movies, but many people will know him as Voldemort. But just an incredible film, and it was like basically talking about like things can get really, really, really fancy, but sometimes, man, there's nothing like a burger. It's just nothing like
Yeah.
a burger.
So, assuming you were in a circumstance where you had to eat lobster every day, you would probably want to utter some kind of curse word, some salacious statement, perhaps. But as you're being served lobster every day, you're likely in a fine establishment, so you couldn't probably say a traditional curse word. So, what would you say would be your favorite non-traditional curse word to utter in such a moment of dismay?
Yes, I have one. It is Jesus Christ Superstar. It has quite a long backstory, but I work in finance now, but I went to college and got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Musical Theater. Grew up singing and dancing around the house, just having fun, just being goofy, being
Living
a
that best
nerd and
life.
being a theater nerd. But you couldn't curse in the house I grew up in, and I would like, especially in high school, I would be like, Jesus Christ, like if I stubbed my like toe or something,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then my mom would be like, Colin, from across the house, and then I would like pause and then be like, Superstar, like, and then like try to get away with I was screaming my love for this musical, which is not one of my favorite musicals, but I was just, and she never let me have it, but still to this day I catch myself like, Jesus Christ Superstar sometimes. So yeah, I would probably be shouting something ridiculous like that if I was forced to eat lobster.
Okay, so this brings me to two questions. One, what was the punishment for cursing in your house, or was there one?
There was my parents didn't. I love them to death, but they would like send you to your room. But like I
Yeah.
was like I love being in my room. I'm a nerd. I'm normally by myself. I'm usually writing creative short stories or just nerding out or juggling, which I'm sure we'll get to later. But I was just like doing things that you do alone in your room, so it wasn't much of a punishment. I tried to be, to the best of my ability, like, okay, yeah, this is awful, but they should have made me not go to my room. Now, I
Yeah.
will say this though, even as an adult, if you like stub your toe and you say even like a more serious curse word like the F word or shit, right? Ow,
Yeah.
shit, my stub my toe. Or if you say to somebody, you're a piece of shit. My mom also considers these words to be exactly the same. And probably the biggest argument we've ever had in my entire life is that I believe that they are extremely different because of the context. Like if you
Sure.
said F, like when you hit your stub your toe versus saying F
Yep.
you to another person, I consider that to be, that's a huge difference. She always
Yeah, it's a
saw it as the
different
same, and we
indictment of
still
character.
argue about that as an adult. I'll still like argue on that.
Oh yeah, totally. Okay, so it sounds like basically the similar thing in my household where it was, you did this, go sit on the stairwell, you're in timeout, go have this like very kind of, all right, I guess this sucks, but also doesn't suck problem. Uh, However, I'm kind of curious now that you said Jesus Christ Superstar wasn't even your favorite musical. What was? What is there a tie? Is there one that, stands above all the others?
Yeah, I really believed in Lin-Manuel when I was a teenager. In the Heights had just come to Broadway. The wordplay, the unique nature of the musical, people saying you can't do hip hop and rap and musical theater. It doesn't have a space. And I'm like, oh wait, I don't know. This guy's pretty good. And people were like, he's a one-hit wonder. And of course, he went on to do Hamilton, which is what almost everybody knows him from. But he did a musical called In the Heights. They finally just made a movie of it. That's pretty good. And the musical was only on Broadway for a few years in like 2009, 2010, maybe a little into 2011. But that's got to be my favorite musical. Still
Right
to this
on.
day, like you can recite things from it, and I just kind of spent my high school years really falling in love with what became and what is really now just the new age of musical theater.
Awesome. All right, to change the subject drastically, what's your favorite non-exercise thing that you have to force yourself to do?
But my favorite
Non-exercise thing that you have to force yourself to do. Like for instance, for me, it's writing. I love to write, but to get myself to sit down and write is a ask. There's other people that they love to read, but to sit down and actually get in the rhythm of like reading a book is just like you might as well ask them to saw off their own leg. It's just such a chore to start that process.
Yeah. No, I'm not just to copy you, not to take from you, because I brought up creative writing earlier. I took extra playwriting classes in college as well. I have dozens of ideas. I just come up with ideas all the time, but I'm a way better idea guy than a sit down and write guy. And I've
Yeah.
just like learned that about myself. And definitely in the last few years, I've been pushing myself with different goals and ways of setting goals or stretch goals to sit down and to write. It's hard to get away from it's a love of nerdom and gaming is at your computer, but also like the Word documents at your computer, and it doesn't provide you with immediate dopamine.
No.
So it is
Yeah.
very difficult at times to sit down and, especially, I'm very lucky that I don't have writer's block, but I need to utilize and I've been organizing as well a lot of those ideas. But no, that's definitely the answer.
Yeah, that definitely is the biggest thing. What inanimate object would you like to be best friends with were it sentient?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably a cliche, but I had a stuffed animal bear that I grew up with, and not
What,
just
what was
because.
yours called?
Well, it's called Bubba Bear, which is I grew up in rural Tennessee, but I took dialect classes in college so that I don't quite sound like I'm from anywhere anymore. We actually studied Standard American. They removed all of our dialects. for the major. But I grew up in rural Tennessee, and Bubba is a term there that just means brother. I would say is or little boy. It's hard to, it's a rural Tennessee thing, and you've heard it. I'm sure people say
it's a term of mild affection and familiarity.
Exactly, and Bubba was his name. It was or Bubba Bear if we were using his last name, and he was awesome. I mean, I was lucky to have just a bear that I fell in love with, that I thought was like there with me in the dark, that we could fight, when you're scared of the dark and you're a child, or you could fight through these adventures together. Of course, this concept has been turned into, comedy movies and all sorts of things. But yeah, that's the only inanimate object I think, and I still have it at my parents' house, that I would like.
Aww,
I would never throw. He doesn't live with me anymore. He's still like, I guess, like one of the only things that is an object that you, I guess, through many years you pour this emotional energy into, that really means something to you. Yeah. You'd grab if the house was on fire, right? Those kind of questions, like what thing that you could buy again but has emotional value would you grab on the way out?
Yeah.
If you had an extra hand.
One from the store would be drastically different than the one you owned.
Yes, even though even though you could probably find that bear. Exactly. Even if it looked the same, you would know it hadn't been on all the adventures you've been on. So yeah,
I haven't cried into it 1,000 times. I haven't hugged it as I went to sleep for 5 years. Yeah,
exactly. Absolutely. Yeah, Bubba Bear. Shout out to Bubba Bear. You're real somewhere, some reality.
Do you have a life hack that you'd like to share with the class to improve their daily living?
I do. I have, and this is probably going to be a great segue, because I'm obsessed with and talk about juggling all the time. But I was really lucky at a summer camp when I was a kid that an old retired doctor from Florida spent his summers teaching kids how to juggle. And it's not something you can really get into until you're kind of a middle schooler. Like your brain just like actually can't do it. Like there's a certain age where like nobody, I think, under 7 years old is like ever juggled. But most of the time,
wild.
And you can play like the violin quite well at like 4 or 5, 6, 7 years old.
That's so funny.
I need to look up the exact. He was a doctor. He used to talk about this all the time. I am not. He had all the statistics on it, but he started teaching at middle school, and you could kind of barely do it. And then high school into college is when you can really start juggling. So probably most people listening, you're old enough to be able to do it, and it really is a life hack. And it teaches you so many things all at once. And like, I know I come from a theater background, but I'm horrified of clowns. Like they scare, like the It movies horrify me. Okay, I saw both of them in theaters. Shout out to Roman, who we watched the first It movie together when I was living in New York City. We went at midnight. Who I know was just on your show recently, and one of my really good old friends. But clowns scare me to death. I don't like clowns. People they hear me say juggling and they're like, oh, okay, he's a clown, or he dresses up as a clown and goes to kids' parties. It's like, no. The way I was taught it is from the vastly different, I guess, ideology and really the background. But it does a bunch of really amazing things. So first, you're imagining to yourself right now, I could never juggle, right? That's like the first, like, if I don't know how to juggle, I'm not going to learn now. And when you realize that with anything, if you do it long enough, you can get great at it, and you accomplish or overcome this goal you think is impossible, you start thinking other things that you thought were impossible are possible. Along the way, juggling teaches you an extreme amount of failure. I cannot tell you, it would be very difficult to catch up to me in failure in life. I have dropped the ball tens of thousands of times, right? Like in studying in high school and then all through my 20s, I've never not juggled. And so every time I drop the ball, all that really matters is that I pick it up and I try again. And as long as I pick the ball up and never give up, the incremental increase is just, on a daily basis, you don't see it, but it's exponential over a 10 or 15 year period. It also is one of the only things in the world that connects, which is why I believe, though I don't know this scientifically, that young kids can't do it, but it's one of the only things in the world that utilizes your left and right half of your brain at the same time. When you're doing almost...
Fascinating.
Yeah, which he taught us all of this as middle schoolers, as kids. His name
Cool.
his name is Dr. Don Rapp, RAPP, and he would never tell you this, but he taught juggling on he taught juggling on Mr. Rogers' show. He had an entire episode where he came on when he was very young, and he taught Mr. Rogers the basics of juggling and talked about many of these things. So actually, in the collective history of America, whether you remember Dr. Don Rapp, which you will not, the fact that that man taught me how to juggle is just, and then I'm only 1 degree of separation from one of the greatest Americans, in my opinion. Definitely somebody I could also go to dinner with.
100%.
In Mr. Rogers is that it is the same things that I'm talking about now. And in that when you use both halves of your brain at the same time, it actually connects and brings them in a way neurologically closer together. It weaves them together so that when you're thinking about something more analytical or creative, you might be able to create a bridge in your mind between the two. This is, in my opinion, which I was not a creative writer or thought I could ever be a creative writer, even which I still do just as a hobby. I feel like my love of juggling connected and helps to this day with brain health, brain activity, and that connective, analytical, and creative happening at the same time, and the things you think about when you're juggling. It also vastly increases balance. This is what he spent most of his years as a doctor working on, was especially for older people, geriatrics, right, 60 plus. The amount of balance, which becomes an issue the older you get in life, right? Especially 60s,
Sure.
70s, 80s. A lot of people have serious injuries because of balance issues, and they fall over, they break their hip, they break their wrist, etc., or have bad head injuries. He found evidence and spent his entire life that juggling can not only connects the two halves of the brain, but because the brain is more connected, it naturally has excessively higher balance. He is still alive. He is in his mid-90s, and he walks around without a cane. This man is like the living legend of everything that he also preaches, which is just remarkable. I still see him. I get to see him once a year if I'm lucky. I have not seen him in 3 years because of COVID. Of course, he's totally fine and living life to the fullest, and is still very, very active and all there. You know what I mean? Like really there. I know this was quite a long answer to what.
Everybody should juggle.
yeah like but the life hack, it's like, it sounds nerdy, goofy, theater kid, sounds like a clown is saying it, but when you really dig into it, there is so much there. And I live by this, and now I've passed on Dr. Don Rapp's teachings, and I've taught lots of people how to juggle. I've taught middle schoolers and high schoolers at those same camps that he used to teach at, and I will continue to try to pass on this information my whole life.
Do you have any, for those that can't meet you and kind of learn from you or from Don Rapp, are there any good like either YouTube tutorials or books on juggling that you would recommend so that they can pick up said awesome life hack? Yeah,
juggling is actually huge around the world. There's even way more, I would say, in European and Asian countries, and on YouTube because of the vastness of YouTube. I don't have one specifically, but there has to be hundreds of incredible basic tutorials. And really, it is all breaking anything down into steps that are manageable.
Yeah.
You should always start a video where you have one ball and you're just throwing it back and forth between your two hands. And then you'll have two where you're throw, catch, where you throw one, then throw the other one, then catch the first one, then catch the second one. And taking your time each day to do these things, and not trying to move very quickly into juggling. I've also seen this as a way to memorize or learn massive amounts of material. This is also quite proven now. Work on it 30 minutes a day for many days in a row. Don't spend 4 hours on it in one day. Break that into 8 days of 30 minutes.
It's sadly like our 5th grade teacher taught us, or our 8th grade teacher taught us, that if you just go home every day after school, take an hour to 2 hours and just go over your notes, you will not need to cram for a test. You will just know all the stuff. And instead, all of us went home and played video games and then had to cram the night before and got like a B+ or an A-.
Yes, yes, I'm also guilty of procrastinating. But yes, it's natural, and it sounds, oh God, but it's so cool. And I've had people that I've like met that I've gotten to just teach the basics of, and then like sent them off, and then they've like sent me videos like months later of them juggling, and it's just the coolest thing to see. It also follows the same like 1% better every day mentality that you see with a lot of pro athletes. And then I was gonna say there's one last thing that it really does. Oh, personal best. Yeah, I knew. I'm sorry. I was gonna say there's one last thing I didn't get to say, and that
it's
is
also about just personal achievement. It's not
Right.
comparing yourself to others. Yeah,
exactly. It
just
really does.
constantly looking at where you
teach you
came
that.
from and seeing how you progressed.
Yep. You'll go from oh my gosh, I did one full cycle, which is like 1, 2, 3, and then catch all three. That's like one full juggle.
Yeah.
You're like, I did it to 7 or 8, and then eventually you're doing hundreds without dropping. So you stop trying to count numbers and you just start counting in how much time you can keep the balls up in the air.
Yeah,
And
that's
then
so
and you
cool.
just like and keeping that sheet. I have also never looked up any world record for juggling. I have no idea what they are. And I really encourage that for people. Like, who cares what one
Yeah,
guy
that's
did
it.
one time? It's only going to make it's only going to make it harder, not easier. So I encourage that as well.
exactly.
Yeah.
I've heard this before we move on to the next thing. I've heard that you're a recommendation that you work with like napkins or something like light that like has a little bit of loft to it. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, yeah. Especially for like 10, 11, 12-year-olds, he would first teach with basically a material that is that's like not, he called them scarves, but they were yes, exactly. Anything that can be thrown up in the air and then has any sort of resistance to gravity will massively slow down the process in your mind when you're first starting. And you can that's a fantastic point. The weight of the object, right? You throw something quite heavy up in the air, it's going to come down faster than something that might get some sort of resistance or float its way back down, even just a little bit. So yeah, we started with we call them scarves, but yeah, they're like a special type of fabric that looks like you just threw a napkin up in the air. Yeah.
Right on. All right. Sort of a through line, but not really. What's a job at some point in your life you wanted to pursue, but you're very glad you didn't?
I wanted to be an architect my entire childhood.
Damn you, Indiana Jones.
Yeah. I wanted to be an architect. I played with Legos like constantly as a child. I just had a bucket, and every time I got a new Lego set, I did not follow directions. I was like, great.
Oh yeah, why? Who would ever do that?
Yeah,
That's just foolishness.
That's like, I looked at that like, okay, that's like how you did it, but like I got a different idea. And I would build these, and I was just constantly enamored with building, especially in my middle school years, 4th, 5th grade, and then into 6th and 7th. I would just build buildings. And when people would ask me, I would say that I want to be an architect. And I was obsessed with it, and I'm just really, really glad I did. I have no interest in that by like 9th grade, and I look back now and I'm like, thank God I didn't get like stuck on that, because I just wouldn't have utilized my talents and my abilities very well.
Yeah,
and,
you wouldn't have enjoyed it. Yeah, and the whole bag of problems.
Yeah, I have such respect for it, but I'm like, God, I'm so glad I don't do that for work now.
Well, just a moment ago, as we were closing out our bit about juggling, you talked about scarves, which neatly transitions me totally intentionally to, if you're going out to a party and wanted to look extra, other than your normal garb, what accessory would you add to your ensemble to really stand out?
Yeah, I just got a watch this year for the first time ever. I just don't wear any jewelry, rings, like necklace, anything.
Yeah.
I don't have any piercings, and I never thought I would like it, but it's crazy to me how much more an outfit can stand out. And I'm also like writing business plans and doing pitches and going to these meetings trying to start my own business. And like, I wasn't actively trying to be like, I have to look professional, but I found a way to like pull off like a really simple, not expensive brown, leather, like not even fancy or Rolex looking, just a brown watch that I really love. And people, there's some small things in life can really make you change the way you walk or talk, and then other people start seeing the way you're doing that. And I do think it actually has maybe more effect than I originally would have given it credit for.
Right on. That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a life lesson you wish you learned sooner?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh, I've been working on this so much this year. I love that question. I used to run from life. Like I would play games or video games and be like, oh man, I don't want to do life. Life is so boring. And
Yeah.
recently, the biggest life lesson I wish I'd learned at 20 instead of 30 was that all of the fear and anxiety that I had just in general about the world and me running from it and not wanting to be a part of it because it wasn't a game was just totally wrong. It is an amazing game. It's just a game. Think of it, I think of it now like a game, and you just, everything starts being like, how do I figure out this game? How do I get a little bit better at this game, and start thinking about it like, for anybody that maybe grew up playing, EverQuest or World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy 14 now and these other games, that's like MMORPGs, right? It's like, well, life is the first MMORPG. We've been doing this for a very, very long time, and just changing that, it was just like a mind shift, right? Just a tiny little shift in your mind to starting to treat it as such, and then actively trying to increase your power level in the game. I have been thinking about this for a little while, but a YouTuber called The Lazy Peon, who had followed MMORPGs for a long time, he's quite popular. He basically has started to turn his life into an MMORPG. And I actually think it's probably going to be like a Tony, I don't necessarily want to be the person that does this, but like Tony Robbins, right? He does all this inspirational speaking. I actually think somebody should come forward for like the nerds and the gamers out there and try to like be the inspirational speaker for, hey, don't give up on life. It's actually this fascinating and vastly creative game experience. And when you start thinking it that way, you just have a little bit more fun in life, and you also take more chances, and you're not as I'm not as afraid, and I'm not as anxious. And I wish I'd thought that way at 20, for sure.
My initial response probably wouldn't be a good sales pitch of, it's like Dark Souls but with taxes. But
yeah, it is. I love
it. It
that.
is, sadly, but that's not a good sales pitch. But I absolutely agree that it does. The moment that you, like, just hearing you say that and like kind of looking at my own problems, just thinking about that as you continued your sales pitch, even though I had definitely already bought, was, yeah, no, it is exactly like that. It does kind of like make you like look at life and go, what can I, what's the loophole? How can I figure out this problem? Is it just going to be easier if I do it straightforward? Is it going to be better if I, kind of take a shortcut? What's the way to beating this end boss that is, paying my rent, or, what's doing this end boss and getting a promotion?
Yeah, absolutely. And for me too, the feeling that I had until this year was, I'm a fake. Someone's going to find out that I don't know everything, and that I'm not really an adult. I don't feel like an adult inside. Yeah. And then you think to yourself, like, you would never say that when you're like playing a game. Like, not really. Yeah. You'd be like, oh, like, life is this.
I mean, I think that one also has to do with this mystical idea of adulthood as like this transition, when it's not. It's just an age thing. Like, I think the biggest eye opener for me was talking to somebody and be like, oh no, adults don't know shit. Like, you don't magically. They just learned how to fake it better than we did as kids. Like, because when we were kids, or at least when I was, it was like, I don't know anything, and I was willing to admit it, and I was just, sad about it. Adults just got better at lying about it, being like, yeah, I can take care of that. I got this. And it was just this bravado, assumed knowledge, machismo stand-in dealy that got it done. That, like, that's how they got to that circumstances. They were just like, yeah, no, I got this. And then, like, the minute everybody's eyes shifted to something else, they're like, shit. And then they just started aggressively Googling or texting people that they knew that might know. And then they figured it out when nobody was paying attention to them. It's not that they knew, it's that they had to, like, to get ahead, they had to pretend like they did. And then the second that nobody was looking, they figured out how to. That's all it was. Yeah. There's this idea that, like, everybody knew. It's like, no, that's bullshit.
Absolutely. Yeah, I said this for the first time earlier this year. Adults are slightly older children raising children.
Yeah, exactly.
And then so when you get to that point too, like you thought like 30 was old when you were a kid, and then you're like, oh man. For me, it was daunting at first, but now I look at it like, well, we would constantly be increasing our power level in a game, or try to better understand our knowledge in a game. Let's do that in life, and that's that lifelong learning thing I brought up a little bit earlier as well. That new mentality is like truly life changing for me.
Right on. All right, on the opposite end of the spectrum, what poor man luxury do you still enjoy to this day?
Can you elaborate on poor man luxury?
So the kind of quintessential example is Kraft macaroni and cheese. It's something that you got when you were poor that was kind of like, it brought a smile to your face. It brought, good vibes to your heart. It got, it put some gas back in your engine, metaphorically speaking.
Yes. No.
But it was $1. It's what you could afford, but it was still kind of like, I'm living the good life. When you're having a couple bowls back to back of Kraft macaroni and cheese for $1, you're just like, yeah.
No. Yeah, that's what I wanted to clarify, but that is exactly what I thought of. And in fact, I almost brought it up earlier when I was talking about my sister and growing up with ketchup and all that. But it was absolutely Kraft mac and cheese is like the childhood. But my college days were my roommate and I would buy this $5 frozen pizza, and we would just like eat half of it each and just hang out all night and just talk and just hang out. And maybe play some games or do something. And like, I look back now, like I have not had a frozen pizza in a very long time. And I
subtle brag.
No, subtle brag. No. I've been training and doing a lot of running lately. It's not more of a. It sounds like a brag.
We get it. You're better than us. We get it.
It's painful that I haven't though. Like I don't allow myself to have anything but water in my house, and it almost kills me every day. But that's because of a bunch of training that I'm doing right now. But man, I love frozen pizza. And there's something about it that will always remind me of that sophomore year of college. That will remind me of Chris, my roommate back then, and just everything that time. If we could have, it's the same thing as the lobster thing. Like if we could have had anything, I think we would have still just had frozen pizza like on Saturday night.
Well, all right. So what kind of frozen pizza? If money is frozen pizza money is basically irrelevant. What toppings are we getting, and what brand are we going for? Let's go deep into this tank.
Okay, well, oh my gosh. So I lived in New York City for a few years. I'm a massive pizza fan. And okay. I am lucky to have also driven for work at one time in a different scenario to almost every state in the United States. And I've also tried pizza at quite a few places. And shout out to New Haven, Connecticut. There are two restaurants, Sally's and Pepe's. And if anybody lives in the Northeast and or knows those two places, especially the originals on the same street in New Haven. And I don't think anything comes close to that pizza in my mind, in my heart, in my stomach. And I'm so glad I don't live anywhere near New Haven, or I would not be able to accomplish my physical goals that I'm trying right now.
Yeah.
Because I'd be eating there at those two restaurants every weekend. But yeah, as regards to the frozen, God, I don't even remember. So I went to school in Texas, and we just had like the HEB. Like shout out to HEB. We had here everything's better grocery store version of the $5, meat lovers. Which even if you were a meat lover, was not a lot of meat on those pizzas. Of course it wasn't. But it had like the little sausage and the pepperoni and stuff, and that's what we got every time.
Respect.
Yeah. But what was your favorite? You seem to know.
DiGiorno pepperoni was like the kind of banger growing up. If you want to get like really really creative, you buy like a small can of Dole chopped up pineapple. You put that on that, make your own like kind of version of Hawaiian, or like if you want to go like super ritzy, you get like mushrooms as well. So put mushrooms, pineapple on DiGiorno pepperoni is like my jam. I'd snap that off. I'd snap it off now. If somebody said, I'm getting a pizza, it's like if I could do that in a heartbeat.
I love the additions. We would sometimes, when it was on sale, there'd be these massive packs of pepperoni that you could buy.
Yeah.
And then you gotta like throw them on the frozen pizza.
Yeah.
or add extra cheese or whatever at home. Yeah, my dad would do that a lot growing up as well. Adding to it.
Yeah, you gotta add some variety, spice it up, feel a little bit, kind of feel a little bit upscale when you're when you're dining on a dime.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. I miss pizza so much.
I thought you were gonna say I miss being broke. I was like, yeah.
No. But I definitely miss just soda and carbs. This isn't forever though. And this is probably, I mean, I'm
just,
certain...
He just looks longingly out the window, just like a bottle of Coke and a frozen pizza, just waves softly, goes, "I'll be back soon, I promise."
Yeah. So I've alluded to this a couple of times, but I go through periods where I'm ramping up to a run, a race. And I don't like exercising. Okay, anybody who says they like exercising, I understand some of what you're saying and some of what happens if you get into a rhythm of exercising, because I do that, and maybe some of the runner's high and some of these things you say. But as a whole, exercising sucks. So
yeah, it's not awesome.
So what I do, and what I'm getting ready to do again very soon, is I trick myself. This is why I played soccer and basketball in high school. It was tricking myself into running forward. And now that I'm not on any kind of team sport, and to no surprise to everybody, I'm going to start talking about juggling again. Yeah, this is the juggling guy. But I run 5Ks, 10Ks, and half marathons and I'm getting ready to do a half marathon while I juggle. It's called joggling. It really is a thing. Please Google it. I'm not making this up, though many people think that I am when I bring this up. And that's why there's no pizza or soda or anything or any pretty much carb or sugar in my life right now. But right after the race, I let myself have these periods of time. So pizza is on the horizon, if you want to think of it that way. But yeah.
Love it. Respect. All right, so if they made a movie of your life, who would you want to play in said movie, and what time period of your life would you want them to play you?
My favorite actor is gone, Heath Ledger.
R.I.P.
Yep. And I had he was the first person that really made me want, like, why I went to school for acting in the first place, and just a massive fan. I was A Knight's Tale was a movie that he did. That just was like, I don't know. It's like my guilty pleasure movie. That's not like the best movie in the world, but is like my nostalgic childhood movie that I think is or was my favorite before I started really seeing great films. But that movie still is just a jam. And yeah, he's not alive for it. He died in his 20s. But I'd like to think that and this is the optimist in me, but I'd like to think my best years are actually still ahead of me, and that in this magical made-up world, Heath Ledger in his 40s or 50s was playing me in my 40s or 50s. I don't know how that's all going to play out. I don't have the script. I don't have it written down, but I have failed forward, which is how I always say it, through so much of my 20s. My 30s have been far more successful than I ever could have imagined. After many years of living paycheck to paycheck, barely surviving, the last few years have been incredible. And that just makes me think, like, wow, I'm so glad I didn't give up. And I'm so glad I stayed an optimist, because, like, what's my 40s going to be like? It's just the way I live. And I know it doesn't work for everybody. But yeah, Heath Ledger, God, that'd be freaking awesome. I'd be so honored. I'd be like, there's no way. So
what time period in your life would you want him to portray you as?
Yeah, so like I think like in my 40s, he is older than me. So I'm 31, so he would be like in his late 30s now, maybe early 40s. I don't know exactly how much older he is. So he'd have to play, I guess, a character that was a little bit younger than he was. But like me at 40, played by Heath Ledger, is, I know, this completely made up scenario, would be the coolest thing ever. Joaquin Phoenix, Matthew McConaughey, and Bradley Cooper are also just incredible actors that I would be also
they would be
honored.
allowed to take said mantle.
Yeah, I'd be honored to.
If Ledger passed, you're willing to take Joaquin or McConaughey.
Yeah.
I like it. Keeping your options open. I like it.
Yeah. I just get a chance to say how much I love those guys too.
Well, while we're still on it, what media, whether it be book, graphic novel, TV show, or movie, have you been putting off that is on your to consume list that you just can't wait to break open when next you have the opportunity?
I was actually for a very long time. I was just thinking about this last night. This is crazy. I didn't know you were going to ask this. I didn't know you were going to ask almost all of these questions. This has been awesome. I know it really is. I'm not saying it. This is so much. This is so much fun. I was thinking about this last night. I think it's come to a close. I wasn't waiting, but I saw the first 6 or 7 seasons of Walking Dead and absolutely loved them. Then something like changed in my life and I didn't want to watch anymore. Like, I think part of it was just a very, very long running show. But there's like 3, 4, 5 seasons, and I think it's come to a close, but do not know. And I think if not, we're getting very close to it. And I was like, I gotta get back on that horse. Like I've been through so much. I want to go on basically almost the same length of an adventure that I've already been on, which is crazy to think about. But I want to go and I want to finish that show, and I really am close to starting that process.
Awesome.
But yeah.
Well, before we throw it to a commercial break, if you could have the listeners of this podcast hear one song of your choosing, which would it be?
No Hard Feelings from the True Sadness album by the Avett Brothers.
Love it.
Yeah.
All right, and with that, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say that's people know the Avett Brothers, but this isn't a song that was played much on the radio, and it's got to be my favorite song.
Awesome. All right, with that, we're going to throw it to our first break. Feel free to stick around and enjoy the Totally Real commercial, or take a minute to enjoy No Hard Feelings by the Avett Brothers. Or if you really wanted to hear a song from a previous episode, check out the playlist on Spotify, Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves podcast song Rex. It's a long title, I know. Don't worry, there's a link in the description. Either way, see you in a jiffy.
Do you need 100 pounds of butter? Come on down to Company Street Company.
What if I need 30 gallons of olive oil?
Come on down to Company Street Company.
But what if I just want one flatless bird roasted for a reasonable price?
Come on down to Company Street Company.
Okay, but...
Just come on down to Company Street Company. We have everything for a better price, free snacks, and employees who don't want to kill themselves, or you, because we treat them like fucking human beings. Yeah, but, yup.
Even...
Just get your ass down to Company Street Company, where the only sketchy thing we've ever done is enable frozen orange juice hoarders.
Welcome back, everybody. So I'm here with Colin. Colin, what's your passion that you've brought with you today?
Yes, I got to speak about it very briefly, but before the break. But I am a joggler. That is someone who juggles while they run, and
Obviously,
yes.
Everybody knows this.
In fact, when
common thing in our country,
it's very, very common. When I say the word, most people think they heard one or the other, jogger or juggler. And
do you get any gesundheits?
Yeah, people. Yeah, so basically, yes, all the time. Like, this guy, what did he just say? It is a real passion of mine. So I got to talk earlier about Dr. Don Rapp and how much juggling means to me. As a high schooler who was already starting to teach other people how to juggle, I was outside in a summer one day, just in one of the fields at the camp that I was working at. And it was the afternoon, and I was juggling, and it just like occurred to me that I had been looking, this takes quite a long time of juggling. You're looking at the juggling balls. Like you have to. That's you're aware of them and you're looking at them and you're desperately trying to catch them as you're learning how to juggle. And it occurred to me that I didn't have to look at the juggling balls directly anymore. I could just use peripheral vision. I could blur out that it was happening in front of me and essentially read a sign that was about 20 yards away. Just like a large sign. I was like, wait, I could just like read that sign. It's like this moment, right? You're like, I could just like read while I'm juggling, and it sent off this. It is a level that a lot of people that juggle a bunch, you know, if you juggle a ton, you will reach this level someday. And it sets off a bunch of ideas of like, well, what could I do while I'm juggling?
Yeah.
And that led down a path, started that day, and basically spent the entire summer when I was 17 years old developing and creating the ability to teach myself how to purposely throw the juggling balls ahead of me while walking. And then I could just walk to wherever I needed to go while I was juggling. And that led by the end of the summer to me able to like somewhat barely jog in a open field, right? Not in a setting like I do now. That progression was truly from, again, a kid in rural Tennessee. Nobody I knew growing up did this. I was a weird kid, you know, especially at my high school. And of course, my last name's already BEVIS. You can call my first name COLIN. I'm juggling balls. You know, you can imagine everybody's like, you're in high school.
All the,
everything you can imagine.
The opportunities were endless
to make fun of me. But I really believed in it. And I started jogging and I was like, oh my gosh, like I could like juggle and run and like enter a 5K someday. That's my dream. Like if I worked my butt off. And I thought I had developed, like I swear to you, like I'm sure so many people who are not aware of the fact that they're, you know, fully aware of there's billions of people and everything has pretty much been thought of before. I was like, oh my gosh, I created my own sport. This is so cool. And then you Google it and you go to the interwebs, and of course this joggling was a thing, and it's like big in Seattle, and like of course they do this crazy stuff in Portland and Seattle and all those athletic nerds up there. But it was real, but it was a real thing. And there was a high school in Minnesota that had a team, and there's the International Joggling Association, which had just formed in like the 70s or 80s off of a branch of the International Juggling Association, same letters, but which is also a real thing. And they had this event, and this is true. This really happens. This is how, in a way, incredible, you know, America
That's
is.
so cool.
That we have the capacity to just say, hey, with extreme privilege and all this free extra time that so many of us have, you can kind of do whatever you want. And there's about 80 to 100 people every year that show up to the International Joggling Association's yearly tournament, this event that they hold. They hold it in different states, different places all around the country. I got to go as an 18-year-old for the first time. And I was just so lucky too that my parents were just like, hey, he's like not playing video games, he's out of the house, like let's support this crazy kid we got. And we drove, because it was it just worked out perfectly. And from Tennessee, it was just happened to be in North Carolina that year, just east of where we lived. And it wasn't that far.
Radical.
It wasn't that far, and we like pulled off like kind of like a weekend trip, you know, just in the car. And my parents you know, took photos of me, and just like I was out there, just like they had like the 100-yard dash and 200-yard dash and 400 and the mile. And this was just eye-opening for me to just meet and be in the presence of about 80 people that were there, just hanging out and talking to each other. And what you get with this passion that so few people have is you get like the jugglers who kind of run, and then you get the like runners who learn how to juggle.
Yeah.
And I actually did really well because I was this weird, like, truly hybrid between what I would say most people fall into joggling with, which is I kind of just taught myself at the same time, completely outside of this context. Yeah. And I did like really well. I finished like third place out of 15 people in the mile. I was just so proud of myself. I was like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, there's all this really cool rules. Like there's people on the course, and they're like not judging. They're referees is a better way of saying it. Yeah. And if you're like throwing the ball forward, usually if you drop it, you are throwing it forward and it fell forward and rolled forward. They will see you drop the ball, and somebody out there on the course will point to how far you have to run back. It's like super serious. They take it very seriously.
Awesome.
They point to where you started to lose control of the juggling balls. You have to pick up the juggling balls, run all the way back to where they're pointing. They have to like nod in agreement with you. Then you have to start juggling before you can start running again. They have all these really cool rules.
That's so cool.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's not done lackadaisically. They take itself very seriously. That's rad.
It's super cool. It's super cool. In fact, I've actually said that I know a lot of people that have hobbies. They're like, that should be an Olympic sport. But I've said, like, one, this would be an incredible Olympic sport. Two, it's super fun to watch. Like, that would be great for advertising revenue. Can you imagine like the joggling gold medal match? And then the controversy, and somebody like threw one at another guy. Was he losing control, or did he do it on purpose? And do we have to do time trials where people are joggling one at a time so that none of that kind of controversy has to happen, which they do in cycling sometimes. They do time trial versions during the Tour de France. So I just think it has this massive potential. And it's so much fun to see for me, because I get to teach it now, like I said earlier, to middle schoolers and high schoolers. It is my life's passion, because when you say it out loud, like, a kid is just like, what? Like, that's not possible. And there should be some things in our lives. Like, Elon Musk is like, I want to die on Mars, just not on impact, right? One of his amazing, famous quotes. And it's just like, you're crazy. But also, we need certain people like that to just...
you need to be a certain amount of crazy, otherwise nothing new gets done.
Exactly, to throw ourselves into the future and to do things that we didn't think was possible. And unlike a lot of what Elon Musk is doing, what I'm doing is not going to change the world. But it could change. Somebody who learns how to juggle or joggle could go on to do something that does change the world far more than I ever will be able to. Because, and that's the teacher mentality in me, but also because they learned something that at first seemed so impossible. And then it just slowly became possible. And like I said earlier, you start being like, well, what isn't possible, or what is possible if I live in that sort of mindset?
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Before I ask more questions about this, I saw something recently that I got to ask you on, because it's in the same foray as juggling plus competitions. Have you seen, or do you know of, combat juggling?
No.
All right, so now I get to open up your eyes.
Yeah, no.
Look up combat juggling. It's a alt sport such as joggling is.
How have I never heard of this? The 2014 Combat Juggling Championship is on YouTube.
Yeah, very much a thing. Recommend checking it out, and we can talk about that outside of this, but definitely give it a check.
Oh, so okay, I am watching live. There are teams with jerseys who are juggling while almost like dodgeballing each other.
Yeah, they're trying to interact with each other's. I don't know the technical name for like a juggling pin, but they're interacting with each other's objects while themselves juggling.
Oh, wow, yeah. I'm watching this live, and ladies and gentlemen, this is what I love about human beings. I'm a big joggler. I've never even heard of combat juggling. It's like, what have you never heard of, even in the field that you love? And what is somebody out there who's doing something that is just like the craziest thing you've ever heard of, and it somehow finds its way to YouTube? I've actually found a bunch of wild sports they play across the world on YouTube. Yeah. And no, it never ceases to amaze
me. We truly live in like one of the most beautiful timelines. Obviously, there's plenty of bad things that are happening, but there's so much cool, fun, and good that's going on when it comes to the people that, 30 years ago would have been laughed at, would have been isolated. If you were joggling 30 years ago back in the 90s,
oh, yeah,
you would have known unless you were very fortunate, you would have known nobody that did it. You would have been ridiculed. You would have been laughed at. You would have been called weird or worse. And you would have been very much either, kind of pushed out of doing it by public society, or mocked relentlessly and had to have such a strong spirit to just do it on your own, because you would never have met anybody who wanted to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what
I try to tell people. But we live in this timeline where you can meet those other people. You can see, combat juggling. You can see joggling on YouTube. You can find out about it. You can go to like tournaments or, meetups and do this with fellow people of a shared, mindset. It's just so beautiful.
It really is. And as I continue to watch this and listen to you, I have it on silent, just watching these 5v5 throw pens at each other, trying to get them to stop juggling. It's so true. I mean, the when I hear people say like, oh, the internet, it does so much bad for the world. It's like, well, any technology can be used for good or evil. But the amount of good that YouTube and just the internet and the ability to connect with people around the world, I couldn't agree with you more. Especially for something like this. Like I'm very, very aware of how ridiculous I look when I'm joggling and how absurd this passion is, because I go to races, and I went to a half marathon last year, and I remember, like, it was one of the bigger ones I've ever been to. It was in a huge city, and I was like looking around for the entire 45 minutes before the race started. Like, I'm sure I'm going to see some other jogglers here. Of course, there were thousands of people there, and I was the only one. Like, no, I don't know why I thought I would find a bunch of them at the biggest, the biggest race I'd ever gone to. And but what it really does too, there's so much I could talk about the passion, but I can talk about myself and then how it affects other people. For myself, it started out as, it's a personal best 1% better mentality, right? I don't care what the world records are. Can I accomplish a goal that I never thought was possible? In fact, right now, I'm doing a half marathon in February that I've been gearing up for. And my goal is by November, I think October, November, and I'll be ready for it for the first time ever, because I believe in myself so much more than I even used to, that I'm going to do a marathon, right? I'm going to juggle a marathon. And I don't particularly want to do, I'm not a runner, right? I'm not a runner. I don't want to be a runner. I don't like running. Again,
I just like joggling, and damn it, I have to.
And again, tricking, like I said earlier, tricking yourself into exercise, finding something fun, turning exercise into a game, right? We talked about turning life into a game, finding ways to have more fun and to challenge yourself or trick yourself in a way into just having more fun in general in life. And I'm not a runner. I don't want to run marathons the rest of my life, but I want to do this, and I want to do this at least once. When I set out on this goal, which I do think next winter, I'm going to be kind of finished with, kill the last boss, right?
Yeah.
I love the Dark Souls you brought up, actually finishing the game. And it's this difficult and wonderful adventure, but because it was difficult, it was worth something. It means something. Yep. It has some extreme meaning to you the rest of your life. And that's the journey I'm on.
I went to school for screenwriting, and one of the most important things in screenwriting is you need to give weight and stakes to your story, which means that each time your character has to overcome an obstacle. If you have no obstacle to overcome, if there is no strife in your character's journey, all they gain is in spite of nothing, and there's no value to it. You have to overcome something to gain something for it to have meaning. And you can see this in stories, and you can see this in real life. If you overcome nothing and get everything, that's how you end up with these billionaire kids that just do these asinine things, is because all they have means nothing to them because they did nothing to get it.
Yep. No,
it's exactly what that is. You have to. For something to mean something, you have to pay a cost, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's blood, sweat, and tears. Something has to be paid for something to mean anything. Which is why, as much as it does suck to have problems in your life, they aren't without benefit.
No, exactly. I love that example, and it's so true. And that's a life example. If I could give a game example, because I'm so nerdy and I talk about this a lot. In World of Warcraft in 2005, having a legendary item was something almost no player ever accomplished. It really, really meant something. Even just purple items, right? Epic items were very rare, hard to come by, hard to find your best in slot. If you, in modern World of Warcraft, has done this, especially the last 6 years, if you just pour on and give everybody a legendary, it's not legendary anymore. It means nothing. If you didn't have some incredible adventure, story, and crafting, and bringing the community together, bringing the server together, accomplishing this massive goal, when I talk to people who don't like MMOs anymore, I'm like, well, think about it. They hand you everything. They make the game easier for most people, taking out mythic rating. And more than anything, they just hand you 1 or 2 legendaries to every single player, when maybe 1 out of 40 players in 2005, if they were lucky, could find a way to accomplish that kind of goal. If you do, and this is true, I see this a lot in gaming. I could throw in collector's packs from Magic the Gathering. you know that every single card in the pack is going to be foil. Well, no offense, it just doesn't make foils very valuable or
Yeah.
exciting or worth anything anymore. Now, I remember back in 2010, like in Innistrad, which I'm a big Magic the Gathering nerd, and I worked at a local game store all the way through college, and I have so many fun stories and love of that game and that community. But like there was basically just like you could open like the card or you could open the foil version of the card, and there wasn't any way of getting foil packs for it. And if you, it just
Yeah.
was so special. It was so meaningful if you open something that was already rare and became foil. And there's just so many life
Yeah.
examples and game examples. And I think the communities are also starting to see this change and wanting to go back to, we have to make things meaningful or everything means
Yeah.
nothing. And if
To quote
yeah.
my favorite Pixar movie, when everyone's super, no one will be.
oh, that's another great example. Yes. Yep. That's The
And
Incredibles, right?
Yeah, that is
Yeah,
The
I
Incredibles.
love
And
that.
you have to, there has to be, for value, and I'm not saying this in regards to people, but in regards to experience, there has to be highs and lows. For the high to mean anything, you have to like wallow in the mire. That's like one of the reasons I've noticed I've definitely lived a kind of hedonistic lifestyle the last bunch of years when it comes to like, you know, work life balance. And it kind of shows in that I'm always like chasing dopamine rushes, and when they are so constant, they become lower. So like for to truly hit a high, you have to like be working in the lows trying to climb up the mountain. You can't constantly be sitting on Mount Olympus eating grapes and being like, "Oh, what a wonderful life." Because after, you know, the 8th grape, it's like they all taste the same. You need to have the Herculean task of ascending up that mountain to taste the grape once, to then have to go back down to ascend back up the mountain again, for it to have that luster and that, not urgency, but that like kind of gilded quality to it. And when you take that away by having it be so just constant, so always available, it doesn't mean anything anymore. Like you're saying, it just becomes so, you know, just tepid.
Yeah. No, I love those examples as well. Yeah, it's one of the reasons you see like hyper wealthy people are like always working, and they're like, why aren't you on like a beach sipping a pina colada next to a model? And it's like, okay, for a day, maybe for a week, especially if you're super overworked and you get 10 hours of sleep every night, you would feel better every day. But
Yeah.
after a year, after 10 years, like
There's
I don't
nothing.
want to I don't want to sit on, what am I doing all day? What is like my purpose? And that's why
Yeah.
I really try to inspire people to find hobbies and to have passions. Like that's why I love the concept of your podcast, because
Oh, thanks.
passion and the passion of joggling that I have, it is the Mount Olympus. Really is. It's an incredible journey that I'm not even finished in regards to my own personal goals physically, but then it's a lifelong of teaching, of the mental capability that I hope to hold into my later years in life and balance. Like I'm like, maybe this guy was wrong. Maybe this doctor was wrong, right? He totally could be wrong. He totally could have been skewing his data because he was so passionate about juggling. But I'm gonna, but I knew him and I believe in him, and I'm gonna try to do that for the rest of my life.
That's awesome.
As well as just, you can, if you have a hobby that you're passionate about, constantly keep trying to, so I talk about this a lot, elevate yourself to a new level. I set goals, stretch goals, and what I call near impossible goals. I actually do this in a lot of different places in life, and I've also seen a lot of tech startups do stuff like this, where for people that are working there, you can even have bonus structures built into it that really inspire people to work harder, so that they're not just working an hourly wage. But you have goal, stretch goal, near impossible goal. My goal is to do this half marathon in February. My stretch goal is to do less than 10 drops in 13.1 miles. And my near impossible goal is it possible to do a half marathon without dropping the ball? The golden race, the perfect race. And then you put
wire to wire.
Wire to wire. And the last half marathon I did, I had 7 drops, which shattered my. When I set that, I actually set that goal, and I thought I'll do 13 to 20 drops, right? 1 a mile. I might do more drops as I get tired. The last 7 miles of the race, I kid you not, I did not drop it once. I went into a state that I couldn't even believe. The adrenaline of the day, all the training I had done, my goals, and I literally at one point was like, I don't think I can drop the balls. And it was in that moment all the way to the end.
Awesome.
It was unreal. It was unreal. I know I'm getting super passionate talking about it. That's the point. But
that's the goal. That's why we have you on. That's why this podcast exists.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't curb
exactly.
it. Lean into it. That's so beautiful, man.
I got to the end of the race and I just stopped juggling. Like I caught it, right? I just caught it. I ended, and it was like I knew the number. I didn't plan this ahead of time, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that absurd stretch goal that I had written down, which I'd only written down a goal and a stretch goal. Like goal, finished half marathon. Stretch goal, less than 10 drops, right? Like that's an absurd stretch goal. And I did 7. Because I did 7 and I hit my stretch goal, which I had set somewhere in my subconscious, right? You're like aware of them. I know it sounds a cliche, but it's like you set these goals, you write these goals down, your brain just starts acting like it. So for this next half marathon, as absurd as it is, I was like, I'm setting a 3rd level to the goal for my passion. Because what if I had the same energy I had the last half of the half marathon last time, that last 7 miles, what if I just tried to start in that place and I set this absolutely near impossible goal? And what this also does is it creates replayability. Right? You talk about in-game loop in video games, right? You hear these terms and stuff. It's like, talk about replayability. If I get a race where if I do 5 or 6 drops instead of 7, I will have shattered my personal best, right? I will still be ecstatic when I finish. But the closer and closer you get to the perfect half marathon, it's like inspires me to keep running. Because again, I hate running, but it's like,
and then when you do that, you can look at your time and try to improve your time. Yeah. And like, there's so many different ways in which is really rad about this, because like it seems like to me when you're running a race you only have like one avenue to excel in. There's multiple facets to that avenue, but there's one avenue of like increase your time or decrease your how long it took you to run the race, where for you it's not only decreasing your time potentially, it's decreasing your drops. There's kind of coalition of the two depending upon if you somehow accomplish all these goals, which is just so dope. It's like this unending. It is very much like life, right? You can never beat life. All you can do is make less mistakes. It's like the Kobayashi Maru of
Exactly.
existence.
Yeah. My first half marathon last year, it was 11:55. It was 11 minutes, 55 seconds was my average mile. And yeah, that's another, I haven't focused so much on that this time, but absolutely. I mean, it's super hard to like maintain a rhythm. And then once you get into a rhythm, I usually am at 11 or 12 minute miles, because I'm not a runner. I'm not trying to set world records. And it has nothing to do with showing off to people either.
Yeah.
It is not, I don't tweet these numbers when I finish and hope people praise me. Everything I do is personal. It's my personal best, and it's just for me. I mean, sure, some of my friends find out that I'm doing this. I've had some of my best friends were at the finish line supporting me, and it was awesome to spend the rest of the day with them when I accomplished the goal last year. That was actually the first time my best friend Preston said, I don't know why we're praising this guy. He only did half of it, and he's sitting there drinking his coffee at 10:30 a.m. as I'm coming in, making fun of me, which is actually the reason I am pushing for a marathon now, because of his joking comment. I'm like, okay, it says you start setting those goals.
I'll show you.
But yeah, and you do it, and you do it and I really do. I do it for the right reasons. So another thing I do is I try to find different charities or different like children's hospitals that are either near the area or that I've worked with before, because I don't want to wear just like a gray t-shirt. And the reason for this is I don't try to
spruce it up. Gotta look fly.
Yeah, well, no, I want to wear their stuff. But the reason for this is because I noticed this in the first 5K I ever ran. Is I'm not a big like online presence, social media guy. Just never have been. Yep. But all these people were like taking photos of me, right? And it's very easy to assume like, wow, look at this guy showing off. He knows how to juggle while he's running,
Yeah.
And oh, look, he's just trying to get attention, or he's doing it for X, Y, or Z reasons. But because I wasn't interested in any of that, I'm just trying to set my own goals. I thought, well, I got to start utilizing this police officers.
There's opportunity.
Yeah, it's an opportunity, exactly. These moms and dads or grandparents watching on the sideline, and the police officers that have the streets shut down. I'm not kidding. If I had to guess, during the half marathon, about 200 or 300 people took a photo of me, and that's because there's thousands of people. There was a huge event, and I'm thinking to myself, and I'm so glad I'm going to continue doing this. Is if you have an opportunity like that in life, you could put on like your own business, right?
Yeah.
Wolf.com, which is I'm a huge Office fan. Like in the Office, Wolf.com. He's got it on the front and the back of the shirt. And he's screaming it. He's trying to point at the camera and all the things like. Or I could utilize that for good without it costing me any money.
Yeah.
I can just wear in Austin the Dell Ascension's Children's Hospital. And I can wear their shirt, and then I'm like, man, that's a great reason. Now I feel better without it costing me any money to these hundreds of people taking photos of me. Yeah.
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 That's so awesome.
And that took me a while too to
free for one.
Out. Yeah. So it's just like an example of like, I don't feel like I'm even giving back, and then these people are grateful, and I'm like, hey, it does literally nothing. I have to wear a shirt. Like I'm going to wear a shirt during the
but
race.
It's still so awesome that it's a choice that you do, and it's something that you get to do for free that makes you feel good. So it's just everybody gets to win. You get to feel good because you're doing something for others. They get to improve their awareness at no cost for them. It's everybody comes out whole. It's great.
Yeah, no, and there's actually just that would take us on a whole other tangent. But there's so many opportunities to do that in life. It's so much more of life is if you think hard enough and work at it long enough, there are win-win scenarios in almost every situation. Mutually
beneficial exchange.
Yep.
Highly recommend.
Yep.
It is the best when you can do that.
Absolutely. It's very rare that somebody has to lose in a situation. And in fact, one of the things I try to teach the kids I work with too is if anybody ever says there's only two options, do not believe them right away and think long enough to how you could combine those two into a third option that's realistic. Because most of the time life is gray. It is not black and white. There's so many cool variations.
Sometimes, once like player A can win, player B can win. There's always the third option of nobody wins and nobody loses and you get a draw. I mean that's in the quintessential like supposed binary. It's like you can always get a draw. You can even get a draw in like sports that like they say there's no such thing as a draw. I believe that there have been ties in baseball and football. I believe there is circumstances in which you can reach that outcome. It's hard, it's unlikely, but it isn't 100% A or B. There is usually a C option, to be sure.
Yeah. No, we've had a few ties in NFL this year, which is absurd and very difficult to pull off and takes an extreme amount of time in overtime where either nobody scores and then
before the refs get tired and just go home.
Yeah, they're just like, even in America where we designed a game to not tie, we still have similar to soccer. We still have events sometimes where it just ties. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that expands into every facet of life. We've gotten a little off the joggling and the passion, but definitely
let's get it back on the passion. What's the biggest misconception about joggling in your experience by the wider world that people just like they assume one thing or they don't seem to get this aspect of it?
Yeah, it was the same reason when I had a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Musical Theater. There's a perception, it's almost the exact same one, that you are self-centered and selfish and you want to be the center of attention. It's exactly the same. It's exactly the same for theater as it is for joggling. I have quite significant fear, stage fright. And people be like, then why would you go to school for that? And it's just like, well, it's one of, I could, digging into theater, and it's connection to juggling and joggling. It's this extremely rich history. It's storytelling. It's how we've passed on history and information and these incredible adventures from the past that we tell into the future. There are quite a few famous actors as well, including the most probably prominent example in Daniel Day-Lewis, who is extreme stage fright, very, very private, doesn't live near just about anybody, wants to be around his family, doesn't do interviews, doesn't do almost anything, doesn't want and doesn't wake up every day like, look at me.
Yeah.
Look at me.
Yeah.
It's this deep driven passion that becomes his life's work. For me with joggling, it's the same thing. There's a perception that I am showing off. And I try so hard to show people, like the shirt that I just explained as well, and I try to show people, like, I understand that because I'm running outdoors, it is becoming public. You are all taking photos. It's exciting. Kids love it too. Like, parents will like tap on their kid's shoulder and as I'm running by, and whoa, wow. That wonder that kids have is a great reason that motivates me and drives me.
Totally.
Because I didn't see that as a child, and I would love, things to look up to, especially as a child. But you don't get into joggling, or at least I didn't, and I've never met anyone else that joggled that did, because you're showing off. By the way, you're juggling balls while running. You look weird. It's not sexy. It doesn't get you a date. You know what I mean? No girl has been like, I love the way
nobody's
you
giving you
handle
their
your
phone
balls.
number or like hotel key. Everybody's like, look, at best you get the kid looking at you wide-eyed.
Yeah. No woman is like, wow, the way you joggled your balls was so hot. Like, no. Nobody is like, that guy's super sexy. So again, there's when you dig into it and you think about it, you're like, yeah, that guy's just weird. Like, why would you even tell anybody you do that out loud, right? Or show them or in any way. But that's why I do it, and it really is. It do it for the, like, as the personal best, the 1% better, passion, the hobby, and the infinite ways you can challenge yourself. Like the infinite ways you can challenge yourself, like climbing up like Mount Olympus, like you said earlier. It's exciting. It'll be something that I can carry my whole life. And then I also think it's important to have passions. Like, I can't play basketball or soccer competitively in my like 50s, 60s, 70s, but I could, even if I can't run anymore, I can just like walk a 5K and juggle when I'm 70 years old. And I also care about that kind of thing when I was.
You can jockle.
Yeah, that's funny. That's a new word. That's a new word. Yeah, basically. Yeah, that's fun.
You can speed jockle.
Speed jockle. Yeah, but barely speed jockle in my 70s. But that's something
it'll still be awesome. And
to.
The reason that you'd be doing that in your 70s is to, new personal best for, speed jockling, or new personal best for the year of 70 for speed jockling, if physically you've regressed, as we all do, and it's just, at the end of the day, it's that not only that you want to better yourself, but it's that you just, for the love of the game, basically, right?
Yep, exactly. And there's a lot of hobbies that do this, that I just wasn't. I loved team sports. I love, like I said, MMORPGs, so like that's a team event where you're like raiding in groups of 20, 25, 40 people. And I loved soccer and basketball. So this is something exciting too. That is a passion that I can do alone my whole life. And I agree. There will be personal bests. Once I'm in my 50s, 60s, 70s, I should only challenge myself based off like that decade. And I also think that this is true too, that the more that I practice this, that you're like, I'm in way better shape at 31 than I was at any time in my 20s now. And
awesome.
So people that also say like, oh, I'm too old, or I can't get into it now, or whatever, like, your life doesn't move in one direction. You can be like really in shape and then out of shape and then really in shape, both in your physical or your mental state, and then come back in a way that you never thought was possible. I have seen this with my grandmother. We spent a bunch of time together over COVID, and she was just like, I'll never be able to like walk around this this long distance that was kind of like a square around her house, right? I'll never be able to do it again. So we just set out on a goal over COVID. Like, what if she could again at 87 years old? Like 80, like straight up. Like, what if she could do something she thought she could never do again? Turns out even in your late 80s, you can build muscle mass
Yeah.
that you have lost because you just gave up, or she had some injuries, and she also just mentally just thought,
yeah, totally.
I can't do it anymore, and I've fallen a couple times, and I was with her for the whole journey. I'm not making this up. She only once, on a day she was feeling really, really good, but she one time over COVID, after we worked for like 8 months to get to this point, she walked around it 2 full times.
Nice.
And it was, and I know that's like the microest of stories, and
No,
but it means
that's so
everything to when I talk
beautiful.
to people about, like, don't tell me if you're in your 20s or 30s thinking I can't
Yeah.
do something. I'm like, man, you got to hear this story of when my grandma pulled off, and it was awesome. I was so proud of her.
That's so rad. Love it.
Yeah.
On the flip side of the coin that got us started down that fantastic causeway, what would you say is your favorite non-obvious aspect of joggling?
Yeah, that's great. My favorite part of joggling that I don't ever get to talk about, I don't think I've ever said this out loud, is when you get really good at something and you surprisingly fail. It's actually, it's really great. Like, I don't know how to put it into words yet. I'm gonna try to figure it out really quickly here. I'm working at home. I now can go easily 45 minutes an hour without juggling. I usually watch TV while standing and juggling, just watching the TV, because I'm bored and I want to practice. I need to get the reps in, and I'm watching the television show. And not because of some jump scare or something, just occasionally my whole brain and I'm left-handed, so it's almost always my right hand. It's my non-dominant hand. Just gives out and the ball goes flying to the right. Like, out of nowhere, right? And I'm like, look, and I'm like shocked. I'm like, what the hell? And it's on the floor, and I've messed my whole rhythm, and I pause I have to like pause my brain, and I'm like still trying to watch the TV show, and I walk over and I pick up the juggling balls. That, because you can never be perfect in life, like you were saying, you're only at the attempt of being perfect. You will never reach the goal of being perfect. It is so humbling and is secretly my favorite thing. When I don't purposely drop it and I drop it and I'm like, oh shit. Like, it still beats me sometimes. You cannot, no matter how many hours you work at something, you will, sometimes unexpectedly, fail. But I take that now as an incredible opportunity to remember and to be excited about the passion again, about the drive, about the goal, and about remembering that I used to do this all the time. I used to drop the ball all the time when I was 15, 16, and 17. And it's almost like nostalgic now, is in this way. And yeah, man, that's a great question. I don't get to say that, right? But because when you drop during a race, you're like, oh shit, it throws off your rhythm, and you're running rhythm, and you have to run back and get it. But especially when I'm at home, it's a really humbling moment.
It's that reminded of your own imperfection to kind of keep yourself. You haven't escaped the race. You are still very much in it, even though at times you're like treating it as humdrum. That reminder that you are, no, you're not, you're not perfection yet. You're not Jesus Christ Superstar. You still got, you still got plenty of room to grow and joggle better.
Yep.
Yeah, that can be like, and part of that is just being in the right mental headspace, which you clearly are, which is beautiful to hear and see. But it is also one of those things that, it's a good way of looking at that circumstance. It's so great.
I also I have some friends that like, they go super hard when a new game comes out. They completely burn themselves out, and they get the absolute best gear in the entire game. Right? The best gear you could possibly get. And then they stop playing, and I asked them, I said, why'd you stop playing? And they're like, well, I got the best gear, and I could defeat everything.
Where else can I go?
And I beat the last boss, and like, I don't know, that's all I can do. That's the game. And then they're like, I got to move on, which is fine. That's actually healthy or whatever, in a sense of like giving up, even if you loved the game, and saying, I'm going to go play another game. But what's so cool about joggling and why it's a lifelong passion is you can't, I guess the last boss of this game would be running a marathon and never dropping the juggling ball.
And winning.
That's like winning the game. But like, I can't even imagine, I'm not like setting out that's my goal, right? Like that's such an absurd, near impossible goal that I guess I get excited, never get burnt out, and I'm always chasing this like absurd perfect scenario that will probably never happen, because it's just exciting that I'm not there yet. Like I wouldn't want to be there. I don't even know what I would do if I finished a marathon and I didn't juggle the ball, drop the ball, right? Like I'm not even sure that I want
you could
that
look
in
at
life.
time.
Yeah.
Like you could improve the time, but even if you did, let's pretend, you won the New York State Marathon and while juggling and never dropping a ball. Let's pretend that absurdity could exist. By the way, it can't, but let's pretend it could.
Right.
You do that, you accomplish that. That is a Herculean accomplishment, record books. You're going to be on the cover of newspapers, despite your preference to not be wearing, the whoever's shirt you want to philanthropically represent. Even after that, has transpired and you've reached the top of the mountain, you can then go to the bottom of a different mountain. You can do it, if you want to stay in joggling, you can do it while going backwards. You can, do it while wearing two different kinds of shoes. Or you can just go to the bottom of a different mountain and, start. There are people that have beaten, they try to beat every single video game using the wrong kind of controller or something like that. Just because in essence, it would be a kind of, nihilistic, or not nihilistic, Pyrrhic victory in winning something that you want to chase forever. But at the same time, that also frees you up to then chase something else. So it's, it isn't its own thing. The way you were talking about this reminded me of this interview. There's one of the best poker players of all time, if not the best poker player of all time, is this Canadian named Daniel Negreanu. And in an interview, he waxed poetic about, like they were talking to him about he's won everything, what would you like to do? It's, and through some odd twists and turns in the interview, he talked about going back, if he could go back in time, or if he could become broke and try to win, start at the bottom and come back to the top again. That idea, just like you could see it in his body language, how beautiful that idea was to go, to return to nothing and come back to everything again.
Yes.
How, like, if you could do that without having made a huge mistake and, burned all your money or gotten financial ruin and just, done it in like a time travel sort of way, or, it like that idea is just like, holy cow, how cool would that be? And that is really reminiscent of the way you're talking about approaching this, where it's, just start over in a different venue almost.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, I can juggle 4 juggling balls now, and I can't do 5 yet. So I actually practice 5 on my own. It's very, very difficult. It's just this whole other thing that I should be able to do it.
20% more balls.
Well, yeah.
25%? 25% more balls.
It's crazy. And I have to, I literally could have put the time in, but I put the time into joggling instead of getting to 5 juggling balls, right? In my free time. I should be able to do it already. I can't. However, you're right. If I accomplish that absurd goal, I could come back and juggle 4 or 5 juggling balls the entire time, right? So you can always make something more difficult. And I also love what you said, because I was trying to say this and I couldn't find the words a minute ago. You're right. The adventure itself, the journey itself is what's so exciting about life. And I see a lot of people just trying to get to the destination instead of really enjoying the adventure, which should be
you have
life.
to. There's a recent epiphany I had a while back that it is literally, it has to be all about the journey and not the destination, because so much of our lives and so much of what's going on today, the destination is unknown. Somebody did the math. The amount of, in today's culture, I believe it's, most people change occupation avenues 7 times before they retire.
Mm-hmm.
7 times. So the idea that like what you went to school for is what you end up doing is very ridiculous. So this idea that we know where we're headed and we know what we want to achieve, that I don't think that's a bad thing to want to do, but to like be so hell-bent on it that if it changes, you're distraught, I think is like really a bad kind of railway to set you set yourself down.
Yeah.
So much of life, all you can do is control in what direction you begin to walk, not what ends up being there when you finally arrive. Because so frequently we find that what we wanted, we start on certain destinations young, we start off going to school thinking we want to be this. And by the time we graduate, we've graduated with a different major, or whatever. we start working in the industry, whatever industry we wanted, or start heading towards that. And then we realize part way, we don't like this anymore. And so if we only look at the end prize as victory, then so constantly we'll be on like kind of all up in our own shit about failing because we decided to make the correct decision and change paths. Where if we look at the journey as its own reward, every time we change paths, it is no longer a failure or a mistake that was made, but just another new adventure. And it allows you to fill yourself with glee and happiness as opposed to dismay and despair.
Yeah. No, it's the journey is everything. Yeah. And I wanted to say, I wanted to say about Daniel, the poker player you brought up. Wishing he could do it again. I love saying that too when I see somebody juggling for the first time ever, or like figuring it out, or having that click moment, and remembering that I had it. It's just like showing your best friend a book or a TV show or a movie that means so much to you, and then re-watching it for the first time through their eyes.
Oh yeah.
It's that same
so
kind
amazing.
of thing. It's just I meant to say that when you were talking about the poker player Daniel earlier. It's that journey that you get to watch other people go through that inspires me as a teacher as well. Like, I would love somebody that I teach to become far better at juggling and joggling than me. Right? That would be that's what we should want as people. The people that are younger than us, they pick up the mantle, right? They take the endless torch that you've been running with, and they take it on once we're gone. And it can feel at times like you can be like, oh man, like I wish I was better, or you don't want the kid that's coming up to be better than you. Yeah, you feel it for a second, or you get a little jealous. That's natural. You're human. But when you work past that, and you watch somebody that you trained, or that somebody that used to ask you questions, start to do better at you in life. I've seen this working and teaching hundreds of people how to play Magic too, and then seeing some of them go off to make the Pro Tour. I'm just like, man, that is freaking awesome. You know what I mean? They didn't know anything about Magic, and now they're I was just there and just excited to teach, and they're way better at me now than I am. Yeah. And that is the coolest thing. And that happens. That hasn't happened yet, but I'm really looking forward to someone shattering what I've been able to accomplish that I teach how to joggle.
Sweet.
Yeah.
All right, to go from the happy side of the coin to the obnoxious.
Yes.
Colin, what is your preposterous peeve?
Okay. So, if you haven't found out by now, quite a nerd, quite a positive, optimistic type of person. I try to be like this all the time. I know this might sound ridiculous, but I have been fighting this for the last at least, I think it's been about 7 years now. So bear with me on this journey that I want to take you all with. Because at first it's going to sound crazy, but the longer you let me go, you're going to be like, oh shit, is this nerd onto something? I believe that Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, and the episodes 1, 2, and 3 would be one of the greatest trilogies ever made if Jar Jar Binks had been a Sith Lord. And I actually believe that he was supposed to be a Sith Lord. I have an extreme amount of evidence. I actually spent a couple hours before this podcast writing it all down. I have it in front of me just to make sure in the moment I didn't forget anything I wanted to say. And if you're not a huge Star Wars fan, George Lucas made the 4, 5, and 6 in I think 79 is when the first one, or 80 came out. So very late 70s.
79 was when, I believe it was 79.
Yeah.
Is when the first one came out. Yeah.
Right. So basically the early 80s, America and the world falls in love with Luke Skywalker, Star Wars episodes 4, 5, and 6. And then after quite some time away from it, we come back he starts working on it. I don't know exactly when, but we start hearing rumors about it in the 90s, late 90s. And by the late 90s, early 2000s, a new 3-part series is releasing to the world. And the first one is called Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. I'm sure most of you that are nerds or have seen those movies remember Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar Binks runs into Qui-Gon Jinn at fairly early at the very beginning of the first movie. So I'm going to assume you know at least enough about Jar Jar Binks to like go off on this peeve. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm ready. Hit me.
Okay, so though he is standing in the forest, it is clear that Jar Jar is waiting for Qui-Gon and knows that he's coming. He purposely doesn't jump out of the way and tries to get hit by, and does, and Qui-Gon pushes him to the ground so that this hovering machine flies over them, appearing that Qui-Gon has saved his life, then comes up with this, well, you saved my life, so now I'm indebted to you. He talks about how clumsy he is, and he tries to be perceived as dumb or clumsy, even saying that he was banished because he was clumsy. But right away, when they get to the pond, he does a massive 20-foot leap spinning jump into the air and lands perfectly in the water with a dive. Now, nobody in the world, or any world in the galaxy of Star Wars, moves like that, first off, unless they have the Force, right? You could say, well, he's an amphibian species, but he's also supposed to be clumsy. Nobody that's clumsy would also be able to do anything like that. So he's immediately lied. He jumps, he does this extreme jump, he goes into the water. The jump is very similar to other Jedi and Sith characters who do force jumps throughout all the movies. The Jedi themselves are inspired by the Shaolin monks, and there's another traditional martial art form called Ziquan. Ziquan is also known as like the drunken fighter. It's a style that's a very old and traditional martial arts style that makes you look like you're drunk, but you're actually making very specific movements that only appear to not be very well organized. This is 100% the fighting style that you watch Jar Jar Binks throughout the movies in every battle scene. He's like flopping around, he's falling over, but at every single turn where the droids are shooting lasers that should instantly kill him, he dodges every single laser. He kills every droid that he encounters, and he just absolutely destroys any sort of enemy that gets anywhere close to him, while also appearing to be clumsy. Now, this is my peeve, and I should have launched with this. This is my peeve because of how many people, one, when I start talking about the Phantom Menace, completely shut it off, shut it down, say it's awful, say the original, the OG 3 are all that matters, and 1, 2, and 3 suck, which, in a way, I will give them that there's a bunch of reasons that you may not like it. But two, that I believe that George Lucas significantly rewrote sections of 2, especially of episode 2 and of episode 3, to completely remove the importance of Jar Jar Binks. And as I finish up explaining all of these, this is my peeve, that Jar Jar Binks was clearly written to be the Phantom Menace. In fact, if I just described Jar Jar Binks out of context for saying that he's a Sith Lord, or if you watched the first movie, you would call him a menace. You'd be like, that guy was just a menace. He was a menace the entire time. And that is why I stand by this. So in the original movies, Obi-Wan in 4, 5, and 6 actually says there is no such thing as luck, right? There's no way that Jar Jar Binks is just lucky to dodge all of those laser shots. The clumsy nature of Jar Jar is hidden Ziquan. It is actually that drunken style. Jar Jar uses Jedi sleight of hand and Jedi mind tricks. He promotes himself to general right after the first battle. Then he convinces Padme to convince him to become the senator. And then he convinces the entire Senate, while waving his hands around, that supreme powers should be given to Palpatine. At each of these 3 stages, his hands are moving. What do we know about Jedi and the Sith? They have mind powers. He also says other people's lines. He actually whispers them, and this is in the movie. You can go back and watch the first one. He whispers lines that other people say right after he whispers them. He does it multiple times in episode 1. He is literally controlling them and then having them say lines. He stands next to Palpatine in almost every single scene that they're in together. And of all planets in the galaxy, Jar Jar Binks and Palpatine, the Sith Lord, are from the same planet. They're both from Naboo. What are the odds of that? He mocks Qui-Gon in front of Anakin in episode 1 when Anakin's 8 years old. He also, Jar Jar Binks is the reason, if you go back and watch, that the only reason that they land on Tatooine in the first place, because he accidentally destroys the hyperdrive, is the person who was identifying and finds Anakin before Qui-Gon does. He's the one who keeps running into Anakin. It's Jar Jar's fault they keep meeting him. And Jar Jar Binks breaks the pod racer right before the race starts, which would, if they lost that race, strand them on Tatooine longer. Jar Jar tells an 8-year-old Anakin how hot Padme is, instilling in him the lust of being a human, and which it goes directly against being a Jedi, where they cannot have feelings, especially for somebody that they love or fall in love with. He, in episode 2, at the end of episode 1, talks to an 8-year-old about how hot she is. Jar Jar talks to Padme when she's pretending to be an aide, when she's not the queen, and he can't know she's the queen. But it is from these conversations that he, while she's hiding, that builds their relationship and is the main reason that she trusts him in the later episodes, including when he convinces her to go to war. No droid that ever meets Jar Jar Binks, C-3PO and R2, and every other droid that he encounters absolutely hates him, punches him, kicks him in the balls, and talks about C-3PO and R2 have a personal, individual conversation about Jar Jar Binks, and that, in their words, that he is extremely odd. R2 even purposely bumps into him on the ship in episode 1 when he sees him doing sneaky things in the back room right before he breaks the hyperdrive. In episode 2, he walks to the elevator only seconds before Anakin and Obi-Wan arrive, and then pretends to be surprised, but there's no indication or dialogue that would inform Jar Jar that they were about to come up the elevator. He is just walking towards the elevator, and then, all of a sudden, oh wow, you guys are here. George Lucas said when he was working on 1, 2, and 3 that he wanted them to mirror 4, 5, and 6. Yoda was a strange, annoying, and not taken so seriously character, especially by Luke when he first finds him. It's only revealed later that that strange character is a Jedi Master. Just like in so many stories that have been written through thousands of years in which a strange character on the side of the road that looks like he's clumsy, poor, or not important turns out to be the powerful master that the young traveler was originally looking for or stumbles across. George Lucas, when developing episode 1, in an interview said that Jar Jar Binks was the key to all of this. Those are his words. Also, you probably absolutely despise the second episode even more than the first one, as most people do, because for some reason, late in the movie, a guy named Count Dooku comes out of nowhere. I mean, who is he? Where does he come from? Why does he show up in the story? And why does Yoda have to fight this person that never should have showed up? Has no context or was not involved in or in even one scene even hooded in the first movie. Yoda should have fought Jar Jar Binks in that scene, not Count Dooku. Yoda could have said something like, "You were the menace. You were the fog that's been stopping my ability to see through the Force." Yoda would say something to Jar Jar like, "You're the one who found and knew about Anakin and his potential as a Sith, and you wanted to be around him yourself. You weren't actually just on some random adventure with Qui-Gon. You were the one who was experiencing and trying to gain control of Anakin. And you used Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon to get there." Jar Jar never led the Jedi to Anakin. He was trying to actually lead Anakin to the Sith, which, I mean, long-term, spoiler alert, he did. Palpatine was secretly training Darth Maul. Palpatine talks about how the Sith can only be 2, but then out of nowhere, he's been training Count Dooku and Darth Maul, which makes no sense at all. Not in the understanding that Palpatine originally placed forward. And if anything, Palpatine talks an extreme amount later in episodes 2 and 3 about apprentices wanting to kill their masters throughout Sith history. Palpatine was grooming Darth Maul. Count Dooku should not even ever have been in the equation. And more importantly, if he was, then what's more likely is that Palpatine was Jar Jar Binks' apprentice. I actually believe that Jar Jar Binks for all the reasons I've explained in these last few, is actually the Sith Lord, and that Palpatine was training Darth Maul and Count Dooku because the three of them together were going to try to overtake and kill Jar Jar. Palpatine is standing next to Jar Jar in every scene, not the other way around. It's only perceived to be that way. In fact, Palpatine would have had no power had Jar Jar Binks not in front of the entire Senate given him the extreme powers. Jar Jar gave the bad guys all of the power, not the other way around. Palpatine didn't give Jar Jar anything. It's also, and I did a bunch of research into this, unclear how long Gungans live or how old Jar Jar really is. In research, finding their age or length of life has never been determined. This could mean that though Jar Jar looks a lot younger than Palpatine, he actually could be far older. Even though the character that played him, the actual actor, was younger, the actual character and the species of Gungans. In 2015 on Twitter, the actor who played Jar Jar tweeted these exact two sentences. "I will say this, it feels really good when the hidden meaning behind the work is seen, no matter how long it takes." End quote. This was in response on Twitter in 2015 to the collaboration that I didn't originally start. That was a group of people who were like, wait a minute, if we put all of these clues together at the exact same time and created the beginning of this fan theory, the actual actor responded saying that to that and to what the community had just started working on. And for all these reasons and more, it is more than clear that Jar Jar was the Phantom Menace. If Lucas had stuck to his guns and let that be the reveal in episode 2, and you sat there and had to experience a fight between Jar Jar Binks with a red lightsaber and Yoda in an extreme showdown that would have led even into episode 3 and beyond, I believe Star Wars fans, for again, some of my playwriting background, my love of storytelling, you would have never left the theater thinking at the end of episode 2, who the hell is Count Dooku? You would have been like, oh my God, it was Jar Jar the whole time. And you would have gone home and you would have rewatched The Phantom Menace or bought the movie if you didn't have it, back when you had to buy DVDs and VHSs. But you would have gone back, you would have bought the movie and you would have rewatched it, and you would have, your eyes the whole time would have been like, oh, I should have seen this. This was right in there, right in front of me. And it peeves me more than anything that, one, people don't believe me, and that, two, Lucas changed this. I don't know why he did. Most likely because of the backlash from fans after episode 1 came out. Lucas wanted fans to adore and love Jar Jar. They didn't. He must have felt that the reveal that he was the Sith Lord would not have been as big of a shock or effect on people as Lucas had originally hoped. So he made massive changes to the script in episode 2, involving and adding in Count Dooku. That's my peeve.
That was amazing.
I would like to start a petition to remake episodes 1, 2, and 3 following these storylines. No, I'm just kidding. I don't. It's okay. We can accept that this is the world I live in. In fact, when I rewatch these movies, which I love for more than nostalgic reasons, now that you see these stories, I just sit back, and when Count Dooku comes on the screen, I just pretend it's Jar Jar, and I'm like, dude, this movie's so good. But yeah,
so,
that's it.
Do you have a moment? Thank you so much for that. Fantastic. That was amazing.
Yeah, if anything.
Do you have a moment?
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, if anything, now hopefully you're like, do I have to go watch episode 1 again? And you'll go watch episode 1 with what I've just said. And anybody that's watching this, I encourage you to just imagine that that's where that leads. And I do think it makes them better. So go watch episode 1.
So I feel like I have to now, and I will. So thank you, or curse you. I don't know which.
Exactly.
But do you have a moment where this belief has really kind of made your peeve just like kind of fire off? Have you had an interaction with a friend or with family or with another diehard fan, or have you described this to them and it's gotten, shall we say, heated?
Oh,
that
absolutely.
you'd like to share?
Well, that's why I chose this. I was trying to think of like things that peeve me in the world, and I haven't gotten to talk about this actually in a few years. But a couple years ago on Discord, I was talking to one of my guildies, and he actually knew more about Star Wars than I did. I mean, there's so many books that have been written, and I haven't read any of them. Something like 80 books that he had read about Star Wars, right? I mean, this was a true fan. I'm a lover of the movies. I grew up with them. I'm nostalgic. I love Star Wars, but not like the true fans. You know what I mean? I really give them props. But he wouldn't even entertain this thought, right? Like, not even let me like get to it or like talk about it. And he just like despised and had completely given up on episodes 1, 2, and 3. And he was like a purist, and he would rewatch, every Christmas with his family 4, 5, and 6, and pretend that 1, 2, and 3 didn't exist. Hated, of course, 7, 8, and 9. Didn't want any more of the movies, and loved some of the certain books, and of course the lore and history, especially before Luke Skywalker, the thousands of years that had happened, the Old Republic wars and all these things that he talked about. But I got so heated, and it was just a couple years ago, and I was like, you gotta let me tell this story. And he was like, it's not gonna be good. I don't want to hear it. And I was like, listen, I didn't like come up with this story, okay? I'm not just saying something random. This is like Reddit threads for years that have that showed me the light. You know what I mean? I have been awoken with the pill of the Jar Jar Binks story. I can't go back. And it did. It got heated in a good way, like a good nerd friend heated debate. He finally let me go through it all, and he was like, okay, that's just ridiculous. But I mean, maybe sometimes in the back of his mind, he thinks about it, and I've convinced him. So, but yeah.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna throw it to our second commercial break. But don't you all worry. When we get back, Colin's going to enter the lightning round. See you in a bit. This podcast is sponsored by
Rational Puppets.
one of the easiest things you can do with your hands on a light source in a dark room. Over human history, millions of people have used
Rational Puppets.
to great enjoyment. With limitless possibility and no upfront costs,
Rational Puppets.
will have your hands busy forever. Or until the power comes back on. So what are you waiting for? The power to go out? Oh yeah, right. Okay. Well, but when it does, we'll see you and your
Rational Puppets
on the wall. And we are back. Colin, are you ready to enter the lightning round?
Lightning round.
Yes. I'm ready.
All right. Put however much time it takes to bake this cookie on the clock. Colin, is there a price for you to give up your passion forever?
No. Never.
Make the food or do the dishes?
Make the food.
Did you ever cheat on a test in school?
Yes. 4th grade English last time. Oh, it was brutal.
Are you out of touch, or is it the children who are wrong?
I just turned 30. It's the children.
Would you rather have your inner monologue sound like Gilbert Gottfried or Fran Drescher?
Oh, Gilbert Gottfried. That's the guy from Aladdin from my youth, right?
Iago, yeah,
yes,
maybe.
Yes.
Would you rather read the cue cards while wearing the crown or live in a hovel and speak your mind?
Oh, I live in a hovel and speak my mind. Definitely. That's my life too right now.
Do you create your own thoughts or do you just listen to them?
Ooh, I hope I create them.
You're having the best day of your life. What happens next? Another amazing thing or something terrible?
Something terrible. Perspective.
Is professional wrestling cool or lame?
I can't get into it. I'm so sorry. It's fake, but so is theater.
Stub your toe or make small talk with strangers?
Make small talk with strangers.
Would you rather have a class of 40 students for 5 months or 20 students for 10 months, assuming the pay is the same?
Oh, 20 students. Less students, I can get more personal interaction.
Correct answer. Happiness or glory?
Happiness.
Nick Cage, best or worst ever?
I'm a huge Nick Cage fan. Shout out to National Treasure.
Would you rather be an omniscient amnesiac or have a nat 20 charisma with halitosis?
Oh, I'm a 19 charisma who wishes he was born with a nat 20 charisma. That's my dream.
Plane flight or road trip?
Road trip. I mean, it's more dangerous, but I prefer that.
I prefer danger.
No, not the danger.
A
it's the
day
road
in?
trip. Sorry, that doesn't sound like I prefer danger.
A day in or a night out?
A day in. I'm an introvert.
Salty or sweet?
Oh, salty. If I had to.
Caramel or caramel?
I grew up in rural Tennessee, so it's caramel. Caramel.
Damn right.
Yeah.
Would you rather meet your mortal demise by vicious werewolf attack or single zombie bite?
I just want the werewolf to kill me. I don't want to slowly die or turn into a zombie.
Yes.
I can't do it. I can't just slowly realize I'm dying.
Exactly. Vocal or instrumental?
Vocal.
Would you rather watch the first movie in a trilogy or watch the first 6 episodes of a new series with only 1 season?
First 6 episodes in 1 season, because it immediately made me think of Firefly.
The Lady Killers or 4 Rooms?
The Lady Killers.
Do you suck the soup out of the dumpling or just toss it down the hatch?
I have had soup dumplings in Chinatown in New York City. You just got to throw the whole thing in.
Just down the hatch?
Yep.
Respect. For the rest of your life, would you rather your food be habanero hot forever or have a COVID bland palate for just 2023?
I live in Texas again. I went to school here. I love spicy food. Habanero for life.
All right. Could you eat 37 of your favorite food for $5,000 in a 1-hour time limit?
I don't think so. I just couldn't do it. I don't know what the money would have to be, but I don't think I just physically could do it.
Well, either way, congratulations. You've survived the lightning round.
Woo!
But before we move on to your prize, I, like many listeners at home, would like to now know, what is your favorite food?
Yeah, well, as you were saying that, I was thinking of 4 eggs and the roasted potatoes that I try to make every morning for myself. So then I thought 37 eggs, and then I thought of this old Paul Newman movie where I think he ate 50 in his character.
Cool Hand
Thank
Luke,
you,
yeah.
thank you, Cold Hand Luke. Love. I couldn't think of the name of it off the top of my head. I'm still in my lightning round mind. But yeah, and then I was like, I'm not Cold Hand Luke. I can't. 37 eggs would be hard-boiled eggs. I don't think I could pull that off. I would try for $5,000, but I don't think I'd get close. Yeah, definitely couldn't do 50.
All right. Well, now that you've survived said illustrious lightning round, what lightning round question would you like to ask me and in turn be asked of future guests?
I was thinking about this a lot when you asked me before we came on, and I almost wanted it to be Star Trek or Star Wars, of course, because of the peeve. But I think Bears, Beats, or Battlestar Galactica, like you're asking, you have to be one of those things with like 3 question marks. Shout out to Dwight, my love of The Office as well. I think that like asking it like a question, like Bears, Beats, or Battlestar Galactica is like is probably the weird way to maybe throw some people off in the lightning round.
I have gotten a new appreciation for Beats, a la my roommate and previous guest Eric Partita. So I think I'd go with Beats.
Yeah. And
or it might be like, I guess it could also be like Beats as in like music too. So in which case I'm a big fan of Beats as well.
Actually, oh my gosh. I have thought of like just now it hit me because of what you just said, like Beats and Beats. Like bears, like you could like love bears because you love the animal. You could love bears because you love bears, like how guys sometimes call each other guys bears. You could answer it saying your love of the original Battlestar Galactica, your love of the remake of Battlestar Galactica. You're right. Somebody
It's
could
got
go
a lot of dimensions here. Yeah.
Somebody could go so many directions with that lightning round question. That'd be interesting.
What about you?
What's funny is after rethinking how I would say this, it reminds me of like growing up and like hiking in the Appalachian Mountains in East Tennessee, and how like everybody was like, "You're gonna get killed by a bear," but I never did, and I love hiking. I love being in the wilderness. So, bears for me. I have also seen every episode of the remake of Battlestar Galactica and 0 episodes of the original, which needs to change. But I also am a fan of that show.
All right, man, as we come to an end here, anything you want to plug, shout outs you'd like to give, places people can find you or your content?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I'm not really on any social media, but because I've been working on something called Austin Games, which is AUSTENN. It's one word, Austin. My love of Central Texas, as well as where I grew up in Tennessee, kind of squished that together, made an LLC, and I've been working on some things. It's just kind of getting off the ground. So there's a YouTube channel and maybe there's an Instagram out there that has no posts on it and stuff, but just a shout out because this is the first time I've gotten to say that publicly. I made the LLC just a couple months ago. That's my passion, what I actually besides joggling that I work on in my introverted nerdum, and that's it though. I don't post on the internet. I mean, if you I said it earlier, but Dell Children's Hospital in Austin and then St. Jude's in Memphis. Got to shout out St. Jude's, what they've done for many, many years, and I'd love to, as I get older, work with them more and more.
So it's AUSTEN or AUSTENN? Two
N's. So it's the first four letters of Tennessee. So play on words, Austin Games, AUSTENN. And I've just started organizing and getting all the social medias for that. But in the future, yeah, I've got a lot of goals for that.
Sweet. All right. Do you have any friends or family you'd like to nominate to come on the podcast so they too can suffer as you have today?
Yes. No. First off, shout out to Roman. You know so many people, and I cannot believe that you would suggest me. I think Roman knows more professional Magic the Gathering players than I've ever met and is friends with them. So thank you, Roman. I thought long and hard about this. I am shouting out Chris Klein. He is a really incredible and interesting human being. He's been a friend of mine for many years. He lives in the Central Texas area as well. He is a judge for Magic the Gathering in this area. He has a podcast that he does. So I think he'd be a good guest on your show that he does for Magic the Gathering. And he also just has an incredible life story. He's been through a lot, and he's found a way to. He's got just a great testimonial in a way, is a kind of, I guess, what I would call it. He's been through a lot in his life, and he has stayed positive and is an incredible man with a bunch of responsibility. Chris Klein, I'm shouting you out. Thought long and hard about it, and he's a great guy. So
sweet.
Yeah. But yeah, besides that, thank you so much for having me on. This was a really fun. A really fun experience, and I got asked some questions I don't usually get asked. Got to talk about joggling and Jar Jar Binks, things I do not get to talk about at work ever or in my relationship. So it was super fun. Thank you.
My pleasure, man.
Cool. Well, thank you, Colin Bevis, for being my guest today, and my special thanks to my editor and momentary roommate, Richard Ashford, and my composer, Joshua Gibbons. And thank you, yes, you listening at home, or wherever you found time to appreciate this. Time is the most precious commodity we have, and I appreciate you spending yours with us. And if you enjoyed this episode and this podcast, please subscribe, like, or just share it with a friend. Every little bit helps. Or if you already have and are out of episodes to listen to, don't worry, we put out a new episode every Monday at midnight on SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes at Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And a very special thanks are due to our patrons, Sabella Yellow. And if you'd like to join said illustrious ranks and have your name read aloud, just head on over to patreon.com/Passionate People and Preposterous Peeves Podcast. And remember, folks, if our days are numbered and songs are sung, at the end of the day, I think we've all won. So please stick around, because great things have only just begun.